Nathaniel began to pace the way he always did when his anger simmered without an outlet. The room fell silent, everyone giving him a moment to collect himself. "Let me handle him, Nate," Tom finally said, breaking the tension. "I want him to get the Davis treatment," Nathaniel snapped. "I want him and everyone like him to see the pattern. I want them to understand what happens to people who have the bright idea of coming after me." He paused, his voice rising with each word. "And you know what? Screw the shares auction. My family retains 80% of the company from now on. I don't care how you do it, Tom. Just make it happen. I'm sick of these people thinking they can come at me after I gave them the privilege of being on my family's board. I work tirelessly to make Hawthorne Conglomerate what it is today. I did that, Nathaniel Hawthorne. I handpicked the best minds, pay them well to work alongside me, and what do these greedy bastards do? They sit there, look at numbers, and think some magic fairy made it all happen. No more. I won't tolerate this anymore. I'm sure even my father would understand at this point. I will not put my family in danger just to appease anyone's sense of fairness. This is my legacy. Mine. No one else's. With that, he stormed out into the cold, his strides long and determined as he headed toward the woods. Tom and the others who had gathered near the door exchanged uneasy glances as they watched him disappear into the distance. "I'll go with him," Jake said, stepping out after Nathaniel. Charles followed silently, with Ash trailing close behind. Tom let out a heavy sigh. "He's a better man than I am. If only he knew this was exactly what I'd hoped he'd do all along." "He was trying to keep the peace," Andrew said, his typically calm tone now edged with frustration. "But people are too greedy to leave well enough alone." Meanwhile, Nathaniel was on the icy trail, his mind racing with rage. He tried to calm himself, but the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He had given Gray ample chances to back off. How could anyone think they could cross him and walk away unscathed? "Gray sent a killer after me?" Nathaniel seethed in silence. "He'll hate himself by the time I'm done with him." Jake quickened his steps, closing the distance until he was walking alongside Nathaniel. Nathaniel didn't acknowledge him. He just kept moving, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. Back at the house, after everyone had finished breakfast, Liam, Owen, and Tristan asked if they could play in the treehouse. Arya granted them permission, but reminded them that they had a limited amount of time to play and needed to spend some of it reading. "Yes, Mum," Owen and Liam chorused before rushing off with Tristan. Arya glanced at Juliet, who immediately came over to join her. Turning to Ethan, Arya said, "We'll be going to check on Ian now." Isla got up before Ethan could respond, prompting a subtle smile from him as he stood as well. "I guess we're coming with you," Ethan replied. Arya nodded at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Anna and I have a video call with her parents this morning," Alex said, "and then we're planning to check out the outdoor sauna we stumbled upon in the woods." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know there was an outdoor sauna here." "I didn't know either until Anna mentioned it," Arya said with a chuckle. "Well, now you know," Anna said, playfully smacking Alex on the shoulder for spilling the secret. Alex grinned, his eyes fluttering in mock defense. "Send me the location when you get there and we'll join you," Ethan said, taking Isla's hand. "Of course," Anna replied with an exaggeratedly bright smile. "What's gotten into you? You don't want to share?" Ethan teased. "There's a reason it's private," Anna shot back, her tone light but firm. Understanding her hesitation, Ethan leaned in and said, "You can't claim a private special spot on someone else's property, Anna Morris." Anna grabbed a napkin and threw it at him, but Ethan ducked back before it could hit him. He grinned unabashedly at her. "Don't mind him," Isla said with an apologetic smile, earning a laugh from Arya as Ethan continued to needle Anna. Finally, Anna jumped up to chase him. Ethan dropped Isla's hand and bolted out of the room, leaving everyone laughing. Isla giggled when Anna called out dramatically, "Lord, give me strength. I promise not to kill Blackwood this year." Stepping outside, Justin joined Arya and the others, intending to ask where Andrew had gone. However, the sight of 3 large moving trucks entering the compound immediately caught his attention. Arya, hearing the roar of the powerful engines and the crunching of snow under their tires, turned to look as well. Justin quickly recognized the man behind the wheel of the Chevrolet trailing the moving trucks and hid a smile. He instantly understood. Nathaniel must be planning to construct the venue for the bachelorette party. "Isn't that Bob?" Anita said almost to herself. "The construction guy," Arya chimed in. "Yep, that's him," Justin replied, as both women turned to look at him. He silently hoped they wouldn't press him too hard for details. Arya, he could handle. But Anita, she could be a bit intimidating at times. "What's Nathaniel constructing now?" Anita asked in a pensive tone. Arya didn't respond, unable to think of a reason for Nathaniel to be building anything. A few yards away, Ethan spotted the trucks as well and chuckled softly. "Game on," he murmured under his breath. "Ethan?" Arya called out, drawing his attention. "Do you by any chance know what that's about?" she asked, gesturing toward the trucks. Ethan walked over casually. "It's Nathaniel giving you ladies a venue for your bachelorette party," he said smoothly. Then with a slight bow, he added, "You're welcome." Arya exchanged a look with Anita, and the two grinned. "I can't wait to see what they have planned," Evangeline whispered to Juliet, who smiled before darting her gaze around, unconsciously searching for Adam. Justin noticed everyone trailing after Arya and Anita, so he joined Ethan while scanning the grounds for Andrew. He wanted to find out if Andrew had any news about Pamela, what Mr. Hill had planned for the Andersons, and to ask about the guard Andrew had mentioned assigning to Tristan. The thought of a guard reminded Justin that he needed to figure out what to do about his house and office building. He was certain Pamela would demand half of everything he owned, including the house. The prospect made him sigh. He needed to decide his next steps. Starting over somewhere else seemed like the best option, especially since he knew the Andersons would make his life miserable if he stayed in Sylvan Ridge. Lost in thought, Justin sighed again. This time Ethan smacked him on the shoulder, startling him. "What was that for, Blackwood?" Justin exclaimed, alarmed. "The name's Ethan, idiot. And if you're going to keep sighing like an old goat, go walk with Arya," Ethan retorted. "You'll never change. I can't deal with you right now," Justin grumbled, falling back a few steps. Then, spotting Andrew with Tom Hill in the distance, he veered off to approach them. "See, you've scared him away," Isla said with a touch of concern. Ethan arched an eyebrow at her. "What?" she asked, returning his gaze with a bemused stare. "Remember, you're on my team, Miss Devereaux," Ethan teased in a hushed whisper, a subtle smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Not when you're being mean," Isla challenged, her tone firm. Ethan chuckled and leaned in close, his lips near her ear. "I suppose that'll make making up all the more." "Interesting," he said, his voice deep and husky. Isla didn't want him to see how his actions sent delicious shivers down to her toes, making her curl them in her comfy boots. She threw him a glare. Ethan chuckled, and the rich sound, despite knowing he was intentionally being a villain, combined with the darkened look in his eyes and the curve of his lips, made her feel far too warm for a day that was a biting 40 degrees below 0 Celsius outside. Arya looked around, hoping to spot Nathaniel. She wondered where he, Andrew, and the rest of the men had gone off to again. She refocused her attention on the task ahead as the building where Ian was located came into view. The cottage was similar to the others she had seen, strategically built around the compound, but it had a red crisscross design hanging playfully at one side of the roof. It reminded her of an old inn from medieval times, except the addition of glass walls gave it away. Upon entering, Arya saw that Nurse Esther and Nurse Paul were waiting and monitoring Ian. Arya smiled at them in approval. She had almost forgotten they'd come along with them and felt guilty for excluding them from their gathering thus far. She hoped they were enjoying their stay. "Good morning, Dr. Hawthorne," the two chirped. "Good morning, Paul. And to you too, Esther. How are you finding Sylvan Ridge so far?" Arya asked with interest. "It's very cold," Paul said with a grimace. "But it's like a winter vacation I never knew I needed," he added. Arya and the others laughed. "That's a relief," Arya replied. "The peace and quiet is amazing." "And the food? Oh my God, the accommodations are heavenly. Can we live here forever, boss?" "Pretty please," Esther said. The sound of laughter filled the room. "I'm afraid we can't, Esther. I'm sorry," Arya said with mock seriousness. Esther dabbed her eyes as if wiping away imaginary tears and sniffed, saying, "I understand." After a moment of light banter, they all got back to their duties. Arya reviewed Ian's medical chart and the vitals the nurses had collated. Seeing there were no abnormalities, she turned to Ethan, who was standing apart from everyone, his eyes fixed on his father's sleeping form. When he looked in her direction and met her gaze, his eyes silently questioned. Arya gave him a nod of reassurance. Ian was responding well to the post-operative care. Ethan nodded his thanks. Juliet went ahead to administer Ian's medication, while Arya reviewed his reactions to the ones he was already taking. They spent about 20 minutes there, and when Arya decided her work was done and turned to leave the side of the bed, Ian's eyes fluttered open. Ethan was the first to notice, and straightened, watching as Ian's gaze moved around the room until it landed on Arya, then shifted to him. Ethan observed Ian's eyes brighten at the sight of him, and Ian gave a subtle smile. Ethan moved from his corner to approach the bed. "Ariana," Ian called weakly, prompting Arya to turn around to face him. She smiled and said, "Glad you could join us, Mr. Blackwood," her voice soft and warm. "I guess I'm still here," Ian said with a sigh, a hint of disappointment in his tone. "Why? Mr. Blackwood, don't you trust us to take care of you?" Arya teased. "Don't be ungrateful now," Ethan added. "You wouldn't understand, but thank you all the same for your effort. I appreciate it very much," Ian said, looking at Ethan when he spoke the last part. "It's okay, Mr. Blackwood," Arya replied. "Now that you're awake, are you up to answering a few questions?" she added. Ian nodded weakly. Arya took a step closer to the bed, her tone gentle. "How are you feeling? Any pain or discomfort?" Ian's eyes flickered as he thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Not much, just a little tired. Everything feels foggy." "All right," Arya said, her voice calm. "That's understandable after everything you've been through. I just need to ask a few more things, if you don't mind." Ian nodded again, his expression weary. "Any dizziness, trouble breathing, or weakness?" Arya probed with interest. "No," Ian answered, though his voice was faint. "Just tired," he added. "That's good," Arya responded, giving him a reassuring smile. "So then just rest and let us take care of you." Ian nodded in acknowledgement, his gaze shifting from Arya to Ethan. "You know, I've always thought the two of you might end up together," Ian said. Arya glanced at Ethan in amusement and saw him giving Ian a narrowed look. When he looked at Arya, she silently urged him to be nice. Ethan raised an eyebrow at her before looking back at his father. "I'm sure you don't know just how dangerous the man Arya is married to is," Ethan began, making everyone laugh. "So I'm going to beg you never to repeat that in front of Nathaniel Hawthorne, ever," Ethan warned. Ian raised his free hand in surrender, a smile spreading across his face as he shut his eyes again. Ethan silently observed how different his father seemed with that smile. He thought he'd never seen him smile like that before, not even when he'd been with his so-called family. Ian had always seemed like a cold, withdrawn man, and the person on the bed now looked nothing like that. Ethan wondered about his father's earlier words. What had he meant when he mentioned he was still here, with a hint of disappointment, as if he'd expected to slip away during sleep and pass into eternal rest? Sheriff Logan's words about Ian loving Ethan's mother and how losing her had changed him echoed in Ethan's mind. He wondered if what Ian meant was that he would have preferred to die and join her, the only love of his life. Ethan glanced over at where Isla was standing with Dr. Hart, Anita, Rowan Williams, Dr. Sterling, Dr. Yen, and Dr. Fields. He fixed his gaze on her until she looked up and met his eyes. Then he smiled and motioned for her to come over. Isla hesitated for a moment before hurrying across the room to join Ethan. He took her hands in his, interlacing their fingers, and then looked back at his father. He wanted to call out to Ian but found himself in a dilemma. He had always called him Ian or Blackwood, or used any derogatory term he could muster. Right now, calling him Ian didn't seem right, and calling him Dad felt too strange. Fortunately, it seemed as if Ian could sense his son's turmoil. Or maybe it was just the way Ethan was staring at him, but the older man's eyes flickered open again. He looked from Ethan to Isla, who smiled warmly at him. Just so you don't throw me under the bus and repeat what you said earlier," Ethan said, trying to lighten the moment. "I think it's best you meet Isla Devereaux. She's my girlfriend." Ian nodded, and to Ethan's surprise, he saw tears welling in his father's eyes as his face gradually began to turn reddish. Ethan shot a concerned glance in Arya's direction before stepping forward. "What's wrong, Mr. Blackwood?" Arya asked, her voice full of concern. "I'm sorry," Ian said in a low, raspy tone. "I just never thought I'd have the privilege of experiencing the moment my boy introduced his woman to me." Arya let out a soft sigh. Ethan lowered his gaze, surprised to find his eyes blurry with tears as well. "It's a great pleasure to meet you, Isla," Ian said, his voice shaking slightly. "Likewise, sir," Isla replied, her own voice trembling with emotion. Meanwhile, outside, Andrew relayed Sheriff Logan's report about Pamela to Justin. When Andrew mentioned that Pamela was at Everleigh Hospital, Justin shook his head in amusement. "I would give anything to see the Andersons' faces when Arya strolls in with her entourage of renowned doctors, casually walking past them and letting them witness just how much of a disgrace the Everleigh girl is," Justin said, mimicking a mocking female voice before scoffing, clearly irritated. "If you knew the grief they gave me for even remotely suggesting Arya as an option for Tristan's surgery. Until they did their research, Pamela was the first to cave. But her parents, they still thought we could find someone better. Hypocrites. They were ready to gamble with my kid's life, but not their daughter's," he hissed in frustration. "I sent the divorce papers through one of our guards first thing this morning. You'll be free of them soon," Tom replied, patting Justin on the back as he saw Bella appear on the porch. Tom started to leave. "I really don't think she would sign it," Justin admitted, sounding deflated. Tom chuckled and replied over his shoulder, "I'm Tom Hill, Mr. Graham. Everyone signs my papers," before walking off. Justin frowned, but Andrew, watching him, chuckled and said, "With Mr. Hill, don't try to apply logic, he's right. Miss Anderson will sign your papers." Justin turned his attention to Andrew, his eyes gleaming with curiosity, but before he could ask anything, Andrew said, "Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, Graham." Justin nodded slowly. "Now about Tristan's guard," Andrew continued. "She should be here before evening." Justin blinked at the pronoun. "Did you say she?" he asked, his eyes widening. "You guys have female guards too?" He probed further. Andrew nodded. "Yes, and I believe she's the most appropriate choice for the position," he said aloud, though internally he thought, "I hope." Justin didn't know how to respond to that, so he simply nodded. Back at the cottage where Ian was resting, Arya stepped outside with the other doctors. Ahead, across the snowy grounds, she saw Nathaniel coming into view alongside Jake, Charles, Aidan, Anton, and Ash. They were walking across the field toward Andrew, who stood at a considerable distance near a section of the grounds that was now covered by some kind of trampoline-like structure, shielding whatever was being constructed. "Okay, now my curiosity is way up there," Arya said, gesturing with her hands as Anita moved to stand beside her. "We could check it out later when everyone's asleep," Anita suggested in a hushed tone. Rowan, who was standing behind them, chuckled, earning a glare from the two women. "Snitches get stitches, Sebastian," Arya warned, making him laugh. "I want to come too," Evangeline said in a whiny tone. I don't see how we can pull that off, little mama. Not with you being Jake's woman," Anita quipped. Evangeline pretended to cry harder, which sent everyone into laughter. "We are heading to work now, Dr. Hawthorne," Cassandra said, stepping into Arya's view with Juliet. "All right, Dr. Fields, Dr. Bennett," Arya replied with a warm smile. "I'll go with them and see if there's any way I can help," Rowan said, nodding with a smile before following Cassandra and Juliet. "Did you see that?" Anita whispered to Arya. "See what?" Arya whispered back. Rowan refusing to make eye contact. "I think he's up to something," Anita said with a grin. "It's a good thing you don't wear glasses," Arya replied. "Because with your ability to notice everything right now, you'd probably be able to see the future." Anita gave her a playful push. "You're starting to sound like me, and that's a no-no," Anita playfully admonished. Arya burst out laughing. As they made their way back to the house, Arya couldn't help but glance in Nathaniel's direction. He stood with his hands in the pockets of his trousers, Jake beside him, along with Charles. Something seemed off. Nathaniel hadn't looked her way once, despite her eyes being on him. The stiffness in his posture, his back straight as a rod, his shoulders tense, made it clear he was upset. "Excuse me, Anita, Eva, give me a minute, please," Arya said, veering off in Nathaniel's direction. Anita and Evangeline followed at a distance. Jake, sensing Evangeline's presence, glanced over his shoulder and saw her approaching with Dr. Hawthorne and Anita. The rest of the women lingered near the cottage that served as a makeshift hospital. "Dr. Hawthorne," Jake said, aiming to pull Nathaniel's attention back to the present. Nathaniel turned around, his eyes locking on Arya as she walked toward him. Jake and the others stepped aside. Andrew gestured for Anita to join him, while Jake moved to meet Evangeline. As Arya approached Nathaniel, her brows furrowed with concern. She stopped in front of him, studying his face. "Are you okay, babe?" she asked softly. Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. He held her gaze, taking a steady breath. Finally, he nodded and pulled her close, wrapping her in a firm embrace as he buried his face in the curve of her neck. Arya instinctively reached up, her fingers threading gently through his long hair. "What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong," she whispered, her tone imploring. "It's okay, baby, I've calmed down," he murmured. Arya's frown deepened. She had been right, he'd been upset. She could feel it. "Remember, we're still taking things easy," she cautioned, her voice gentle. "A heart transplant takes years to truly settle in. Please don't let anything or anyone get to you." Nathaniel exhaled slowly, the soothing way she stroked his scalp, both distracting and comforting. He didn't want her to stop. After a moment, he pulled back, holding her gaze. "Let's go inside," he said. Arya nodded. He laced his fingers with hers and began to guide her toward the house. "We're heading inside, Anita, Eva," Arya called over her shoulder. "We're right behind you," Anita replied, pulling Andrew along. Evangeline did the same with Jake, and the other men followed from behind. "There's something I need to tell you, Eva," Jake said, glancing at her as they walked. "I sensed it earlier, you know, that something was going on," Evangeline replied, her voice low and tinged with apprehension. "Is it bad news?" Jake shook his head and Evangeline let out a sigh of relief. "What is it?" she asked, though a sinking feeling told her it was about Luke Greetham. Maybe he'd been captured, she thought. That would explain why Jake seemed slightly less tense. "Luke Greetham was here at Sylvan Ridge," Jake began. "Please tell me he's been caught," she implored. "He's dead," Jake said simply. Evangeline stumbled, nearly losing her footing, but Jake caught her. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "Did you do it?" she asked quietly, needing to know. "Does it matter, babe? He's no longer a threat, that's the bottom line," Jake replied, not wanting to scare her by letting her catch a glimpse of the monster he could be. She nodded slowly, letting out a shaky breath. "I can't believe it's actually over. I'm free of that one bad decision," she said, her voice trembling. Jake pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as her body trembled against his. He buried his face in the curve of her neck, and she closed her eyes, nuzzling against him. When Jake pulled back slightly, his eyes shut, he kissed her softly. Evangeline responded, her hands sliding up to rest against his chest, grounding herself in the moment of relief and safety. But then she remembered where they were, in the plain view of everyone. "We are outside, Jake," she reminded him in a soft whisper. "I don't care right now, baby," he responded, wanting to keep her in his warm embrace. Adam knew he had no business offering to drive Juliet and Cassandra back to the hospital with Rowan. He hadn't slept a wink since the previous night, having been part of the night crew patrolling the ranch and its surroundings to keep potential threats at bay. Still, the sight of the venue being set up for Miss Morris and Miss Reynolds' bachelorette party sparked an idea. He wanted to be sure Juliet would attend so he could join the planned strip dance. He couldn't outright ask her to be his date, since the ladies weren't supposed to know about the planned surprise. Instead, he decided to ask if Dr. Hawthorne had spoken to her about the party. As he glanced in the rearview mirror, Adam saw Juliet looking back at him, her gaze unwavering, gleaming with adoration as she openly studied him. He smiled faintly and turned his attention back to the road. When they reached the hospital, Rowan got out first to open the back door for the ladies. Adam followed, locking the Jeep after Cassandra exited. As they headed inside, Adam realized Rowan seemed to know Juliet and Cassandra when he overheard them talking about their internship year in New York. Keeping a respectful distance, he walked a few paces behind, As the three of them talked while climbing the hospital stairs, Juliet kept glancing back at him, and Adam wasn't sure if she was checking to see if he was still following or wondering why he was even there. When they reached the entrance of a door labeled Doctor's Lounge, Cassandra and Rowan entered, leaving Juliet behind. She stayed in the hallway, giving Adam a searching look as he approached. "I know you worked through the night. You should be resting," she said, concern evident in her voice. Adam grinned. "Yes, I should. I just wanted to ask you something," he said, finishing with an uncertain gesture towards her. Juliet stepped forward, grabbing his hand and leading him away from the lounge. She guided him down another corridor to an office with her name on the door. Once inside, she closed the door behind them and turned to him. She then made to let go of his hand, but before she could pull away, Adam tightened his hold and gently tugged her closer. "I hated that you slept with no heat to warm you yesterday," Adam said, his voice low and teasing, his grin widening as his gaze grew hooded. Juliet chuckled, her eyes glinting with amusement. "Well, there was the fire, remember?" she replied. "Totally inadequate, I bet," he quipped, his tone playful. Juliet tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips as she played along. "Nah, I think it was perfect," she said. Before she could add more, Adam leaned down and kissed her. Juliet responded instantly, wrapping her arms around his neck and melting into the kiss. Being with Adam always felt like an adventure, a thrilling experience she wanted to keep exploring. He took her breath away, and knowing he was genuinely interested in a relationship made it harder to stick to dating rules. Adam wasn't the type to play games, and she loved that about him. The last thing Juliet needed was someone who was in it for the thrill, and she hoped with all her heart that what they had would grow into something extraordinary, something as beautiful as what Dr. Hawthorne shared with her very devoted husband. When Adam trailed kisses down Juliet's throat, she leaned back to give him more access. As he moved lower, her fingers tangled in his hair. When he lifted her and turned to pin her against the wall, she shut her eyes, her body taut with anticipation. Their breaths came hard and fast, filling the space between them. A soft knock on the door, followed by a hesitant, "Dr. Bennett?" made Juliet want to scream. Adam was so close, and the interruption felt unbearable. Adam met her gaze, his eyes locking on hers as she breathed through parted lips, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She made no move to respond to the knock, her silence betraying her desire to stay right where she was. Without a word, Adam captured her lips again, pouring everything he felt into the kiss. Juliet quivered against him, a soft moan escaping her, but he silenced it with his mouth. The knock came again, more insistent this time, accompanied by the same call. Moments later, the sound of retreating footsteps echoed down the hallway. Knowing there was a possibility it might be important, Adam quickened his pace. His kisses deepened, his movements unrelenting, drawing more muffled whimpers from Juliet. When he was finally done, breathing hard, she clung to him, trembling, afraid she might collapse to the floor if he let go. Nuzzling her neck, Adam murmured, his voice rough and low. "Please be part of the bachelorette party. I want you there." "Yes," Juliet replied, her voice faint and unsteady. "Good," he said simply, satisfaction spreading through him like a warm tide. He kissed her slowly again, savoring the moment. Later, when Adam left the hospital and headed for his jeep, exhaustion hit him hard. He regretted not arranging for backup, but the thought made him grin. He slid into the driver's seat and spotted Lewis's car pulling out of the hospital parking lot. Without hesitation, he started his engine, intending to catch up with him. Earlier, Lewis had been summoned by Mr. Hill to retrieve a courier package from the Sylvan Ridge post office and deliver it to Pamela Anderson for her signature. The moment Pamela's name was mentioned, Lewis felt a wave of dread. He knew the task would guarantee a rough start to his day. At precisely 7 p.m., Lewis arrived at the post office, surprised to find someone waiting for him with the parcel. Initially skeptical about the timing of the errand, he reminded himself this was Tom Hill. Everything about the man was unconventional. The person at the counter handed him the package without issue and wished him a good day. 10 minutes later, Lewis arrived at the hospital. Ms. White seemed to be expecting him and greeted him with her usual calm demeanor. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, she led him to Pamela's hospital room. Inside, a nurse was administering medication into Pamela's intravenous line. The patient, however, was loudly questioning the nurse about the contents of the IV infusion, accusing her of being sent to kill her, so Justin could gain custody of her son. The nurse, clearly unimpressed, rolled her eyes and silently left the room after completing her task. Lewis took in Pamela's appearance, her heavily bandaged leg and forehead, a testament to her recent injuries. She turned her fiery gaze toward Miss White, and then to him. "Good morning, Miss Anderson," Miss White began politely. "I'm Mrs. Graham," Pamela shouted, cutting her off. "And I'll be Mrs. Graham until the day I die." Miss White offered a patient smile and continued. "Of course, my apologies, Mrs. Graham. This gentleman is here to see you, and I'd also like to check on how you're feeling today." Lewis couldn't help but admire Miss White's seemingly saint-like temperament. Her ability to remain composed in the face of Pamela's hostility was remarkable. Meanwhile, his own irritation was steadily growing. "Don't act like you care about me, witch," Pamela spat. "I'm sure you and that wannabe Aria are plotting to finish me off so Justin can get sole custody of my son, but you're both going to be disappointed because I have no intention of giving him the satisfaction." Lewis glanced at Ms. White, noting her unwavering professionalism. She showed no sign of engaging with Pamela's tirade, maintaining her polite demeanor. When Pamela launched into another stream of accusations, Lewis finally had enough. "Enough!" he snapped. Pamela blinked in shock, momentarily silenced as she gaped at him. Her expression quickly shifted to anger, and she opened her mouth to retaliate. Lewis took a step forward, his imposing presence making her swallow her words. "How did Justin manage to have a child with you?" Lewis asked, genuinely bemused. The woman was crass and insufferably rude. "What do you mean by that?" Pamela shot back, but her lips trembled as she registered the disgust in Lewis's expression. "Scratch that, it's none of my business, however." Lewis trailed off, ignoring her glare as he followed Mr. Hill's instructions. He handed Pamela a blue folder, holding her gaze until she reluctantly took it. Pamela opened the folder, her face paling as her eyes darted back and forth across the pages. She flipped through them hurriedly before slamming the folder shut. Her lips trembled, and her hands shook slightly. Without a word, Lewis pulled out a yellow folder and placed it on top of the blue one in her lap. Pamela avoided looking at him, and Lewis had no intention of checking the contents of the folder. His job was clear: deliver the documents one by one and ensure she signed the last one. "Mrs. Graham, are you all right? Should I get one of the doctors?" Miss White asked, her tone unreadable. Pamela glared at her. "I'm fine, thank you," she snapped, her voice sharp with irritation. When Lewis placed the final folder on her lap, he opened it to the signature page and handed her a pen. Pamela grabbed it without hesitation, quickly signing as though she couldn't wait to get rid of him. Lewis compared her signature to the sample Mr. Hill had provided and confirmed it was an exact match. He collected the final folder, leaving the others in her lap, and turned to leave. "I'm not giving him my son. It isn't fair," Pamela said, her voice breaking. "Lose the attitude, Miss Anderson. It's ugly," Lewis replied curtly before walking out with Miss White. As they entered the corridor, Miss White glanced at him and said, "That was neatly done, so I assume I was meant to be a witness." Only then did Lewis realize why the older woman had endured Pamela's tirade so patiently. He chuckled and handed her the signed folder. "Mr. Hill has a way of reminding us why we shouldn't try to cross him," Lewis quipped. Ms. White chuckled softly. "Let me tell you about my first encounter with him, back when he came to shut this place down." Ow! Ms. White launched into a story, making Lewis chuckle despite himself as he followed her to her office. However, on the way, he noticed a patient being aggressive towards the attending nurses and decided to stay back for a moment to assess the situation. When he checked the time a few minutes later, he realized it was already 9 a.m. Wonderful, he thought. He had promised Cassandra he would join her for breakfast, but now he doubted he could make it. Just as he thought it was safe to leave, Cassandra appeared at the end of the corridor with Rowan and the pediatric assistant. Lewis observed their body language, noting how Cassandra seemed to keep a slight distance from the other two. He wondered if it was a professional boundary or if Rowan might be interested in the assistant. Then he remembered that Stephen had also shown interest in her. Before he could dwell on it, Cassandra caught sight of him. and her face lit up with the most beautiful smile. It warmed his heart, and Lewis forgot about Rowan and the assistant entirely. Cassandra rushed toward him, a spring in her step. "Fancy seeing you here, stranger," she said, her eyes sparkling. Lewis took in her appearance with a subtle smile, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I could say the same, Dr. Fields," he replied coolly. Lewis wasn't usually talkative, but with her he didn't seem to mind. "I work here," she countered with a grin. "Working too," he said, holding up the folder. "And I'm on my way out," he added. "Okay, I suppose I'll see you later," she asked softly. "You can count on that," he replied, his voice low and raspy. Cassandra swayed slightly, her happiness evident. When Rowan approached, Lewis waved at him and began to back away. "Morning, Lewis," Rowan called out as he passed. Lewis noticed Cassandra's lingering gaze and wished he could kiss her goodbye, but he figured he should let her maintain her professionalism. Giving her a nod, he turned and continued walking. He was nearing the end of the corridor when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw Cassandra jogging toward him. "You forgot this," she said, breathing hard as she held up one of the copies of the papers Miss White had signed. Lewis hadn't actually forgotten it. He'd intentionally left 2 copies with Miss White. He wasn't sure if Miss White had deliberately asked Cassandra to bring it to him, or if it was an honest mistake. Taking the paper from her, he pulled her close and gave her a slow, lingering kiss. When he let her go and stepped back, she giggled softly. Lewis chuckled in response, gave her a little nod, and turned to leave. His head was a bit in the clouds, and he didn't notice Adam's car until Adam honked from behind. Startled, Lewis slowed down and honked back in acknowledgement as they continued towards the ranch, maintaining a steady speed. When they arrived, Lewis noticed that construction of the party venue had begun. Seeing the progress, he grinned to himself, feeling a small sense of excitement at what was to come. Entrance, exited the car with the folder in hand, and proceeded inside. In the sitting room gathered near the fireplace were Mr. Hill, Dawn, Miss Bella, Miss Everly, Justin, Tristan, Liam, and Owen, along with the triplets who sat in their strollers. As Lewis entered, Tom noticed him immediately. Rising from his chair, he excused himself from the group. Justin, sensing something, stood cautiously watching as Tom approached Lewis. When Justin saw Lewis hand a folder to Mr. Hill, he moved closer to join them. "You were gone for a while. I was beginning to wonder if you encountered any issues," Tom remarked with mild curiosity. "No issues, Mr. Hill. Ms. Anderson signed promptly after reviewing the previous documents," Lewis replied in a calm tone. "Did you happen to see what exactly prompted her to sign so quickly?" Tom asked with a sly smile. "No, I didn't," Lewis answered. "Fascinating. And you're not even a little curious?" Tom pressed further, his expression teasing. Lewis grinned. "Considering it's you, Mr. Hill, not particularly," he responded. Tom chuckled lightly. "Life can feel monotonous sometimes. You have to create your own excitement now and then," he said almost philosophically. "I take it you uncovered something incriminating?" Lewis asked, noting Tom's eagerness to elaborate. Tom's eyes glinted. "Experience tells me that individuals who live a privileged life with their fathers constantly cleaning up their messes tend to become reckless and overconfident. Assessing character is part of what I do. Miss Anderson had a reputation around here, and I knew I just needed to dig deep enough to find what her father couldn't bury thoroughly enough," Tom explained with a knowing smirk. "What exactly did you find?" Lewis inquired. "There wasn't just one thing. I found at least 3, Tom began, ticking off his findings. "First, there was a hit-and-run incident. Then there was the drowning of a pregnant maid at the Anderson estate. Lastly, a taped sexual encounter with a male staff member that resulted in a pregnancy and subsequent termination. I figured this was sufficient leverage to secure Justin's freedom." Lewis frowned. "Those are serious offenses. She shouldn't be allowed to walk," he said in a hushed tone. "I know," Tom replied simply. He then turned to leave but paused when Justin approached, his expression curious and uncertain. "Here, you'll need to sign these and return them to me for filing," Tom said, handing over the folder. Justin took it with hesitation, suspecting it contained the divorce papers. Yet he couldn't fathom how Mr. Hill had coerced Pamela into signing so quickly. Finding a seat, he opened the folder and, to his astonishment, saw Pamela's signature on the documents. He glanced at Lewis, who offered a subtle nod of acknowledgement before exiting the room. Justin, still in shock, shifted his gaze from the papers to Tom's retreating back, and then toward the door through which Lewis had left. Suddenly, Justin jumped to his feet as if startled by an unseen force and rushed outside. How did you manage this?" he called out after Lewis. Lewis, walking toward his car, paused, turned slightly and shrugged. "I just followed Mr. Hill's instructions. You should ask him," he replied, before continuing to his car. Justin stood rooted, his entire body trembling. "I'm free," he thought, the words echoing in his mind. Tears stung the back of his eyes as he shut them briefly, allowing the weight of the realization to sink in. When he returned to the house, he sought a quiet corner, signed the documents, and carefully replaced them in the folder. Rising, he walked back to where the family was gathered and handed the papers to Mr. Hill. Sitting down again, he addressed Tom. "Mr. Hill," he called in a hushed tone, gaining the older man's attention, "I own an office complex and a house that I'd like to sell. Would your firm or your contacts be interested?" Justin asked tentatively. "I'll look into it, Graham," Tom replied, his gaze steady as he held Justin's. Justin nodded, leaning back briefly before straightening up once more. "Thank you, sir," he said softly. Tom gave him a brief nod of acknowledgement. Ms. Everly, who had been quietly observing the exchange, smiled to herself. Upstairs, alone with Nathaniel, Aria leaned back against the headboard while Nathaniel rested his head on her lap, lying on his stomach. She ran her fingers through his hair, gently stroking his scalp. Nathaniel didn't want her to stop. The soothing motion helped calm him after hearing about Gray's failed attack. He reflected on the attack on Tom and Ethan, the death of Ethan's mother, and Ian's will, which had brought the shares auction to a halt. In hindsight, these events now felt like a mixed blessing. Without them, he might still be at the mercy of individuals like Gray, endlessly delaying the inevitable. Nathaniel considered his legacy. With 4 sons, a daughter, and the possibility of more children in the future, he felt secure in their collective strength. Adding in Tom, Aria himself, and Jake's son, he figured the Hawthorne conglomerate board seats would be well occupied. Fuming inwardly, he began devising his strategy. He would strip the board members of their shares, leaving them with an insignificant stake, one incapable of ever threatening his children's future. "Are you aware that you're growling?" Aria whispered softly, leaning over to speak directly into his ear. Then, with a playful smirk, she gently nibbled on the shell of his ear. Nathaniel felt a jolt of intense desire rush through him, and he grunted with eyes closed to contain it. He then shifted his position, looking up at her with a raised eyebrow, a mix of desire and warning in his expression. He wasn't in the mood for gentleness, and her teasing him was only going to provoke a more feral side of him. Though they were both still physically vulnerable, he didn't care at that moment. Unaware of the storm brewing inside him, Aria smiled at his reaction, her gaze soft and adoring. She cupped his jaw and leaned in, capturing his lips slowly, but as she did, she quickly realized she had stirred something dangerous within him when he shifted their positions, guiding her to straddle him. Sitting up, he held her eyes, his gaze dark and commanding. "Nathan," she whispered softly into his mouth. Nathaniel didn't answer with words. Instead, he channeled all his frustration and anger into raw energy and passion, taking control of the moment. Later in the evening, as the family gathered in the gazebo for a sit-out, the sound of a helicopter overhead drew the attention of the Hawthorne guards. They immediately stood and moved out from beneath the shelter of the gazebo, their eyes trained on the sky. "Who is that?" Anton asked with genuine curiosity. "Jaden," Andrew answered, as the helicopter descended a few meters away from the structure. The sound of the motor slowed and the 4 doors of the aircraft opened. Jaden jumped out wearing a hooded winter jacket over a green sweatshirt, paired with denim pants and knee-length boots. She smiled when she saw the Hawthorne guards gathered ahead to greet her. Approaching the group, she said, "Reporting for duty, sir." Her eyes moved from Andrew to Charles and then to Jake. She had been a little apprehensive about seeing Jake again, but she noticed he wasn't looking at her with that cold, distant gaze anymore. In fact, she saw him smiling at her as she got closer. Andrew couldn't help but notice that Jayden had started growing her hair back, now at shoulder length. It made her appear more feminine, which caught him off guard. He was used to her having a very short, military-style haircut like the other men. "You look different," Jake, who was standing next to Andrew, pointed out. "Guys, I just let my hair grow." "Stop being weird," Jayden said, noticing the guards looking at her curiously. "Okay, it's nice to have you here," Andrew replied. He then gestured towards the gazebo so Jayden could see that Nathaniel and the rest of the family were there. Jayden nodded and made her way over to greet them. "Welcome to Sylvan Ridge," Nathaniel said with a grin. "I hope you like the cold," he added, causing Ethan to glance at him with a scowl. Everyone laughed, except for Justin, who was silently studying Jayden. His eyes trailed down her body, lingering on her long legs and shapely hips, before moving up to her upper body, which was shielded by layers of clothing. When his gaze continued upward, it met Jayden's for a brief, intense moment before she looked away. Just then, Evangeline, who'd gone to use the bathroom with Claire, appeared in Jayden's line of sight as she retreated to join the Hawthorne guards. Jayden froze when she saw Evangeline. For some reason, Jake glanced in Jayden's direction and noticed her eyes darting nervously as she looked at something. Following her gaze, he saw Evangeline. He sighed and moved to stand beside Jayden, who lowered her gaze, took a steady breath, and then looked back up in Evangeline's direction. "She's real. You're not seeing a ghost. She's not Julia," Jake murmured beside Jayden, making the other woman look at him with furrowed brows. "Her name is Dr. Evangeline Hart, a pediatrician who works with Dr. Williams," Jake continued, not breaking eye contact with Jayden. "Are you for real? She could almost pass as..." Jayden started, her voice quiet. "Wait until she gets closer, then you'll see it's just a first impression." "And you can see she's heavily pregnant?" Jake supplied. Jayden nodded. "She's also my son's surrogate," Jake added, giving Jayden a meaningful look. He survived?" Jayden whispered, her voice trembling. Jake nodded. "Thanks to the boss, Dr. Hawthorne, and her. She agreed to help him," Jake said, his voice deeper than usual. "Oh my God," Jayden whispered, still watching Evangeline as she waddled in their direction. "She has my child, and my heart," Jake said quietly. Jayden nodded slowly. "It's only right," she murmured to herself. When Anita saw Jayden, she beamed and called out, "Hey Jayden, happy holidays." Jayden managed a warm smile. "Thank you, Mom," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mom?" Anita repeated with a light admonishment. Jayden smiled. "Please call me Anita," she added. Jayden nodded with a small smile. Evangeline, watching from a distance, felt a curious tension. She didn't know who the woman standing next to Jake was, but she felt a bit intimidated by how fitting they looked together. The woman seemed as imposing as she was beautiful. But when she looked at Jake, she saw his eyes were focused solely on her. Her heart fluttered. When they got closer to Jake and Jayden, Anita gave Jayden a side hug before joining the family in the gazebo. Jake beckoned Evangeline to come closer to his side. Evangeline silently hoped that the woman wouldn't be one of Jake's exes. "Evangeline, I want you to meet Jayden. She's one of the Hawthorne guards, but in the female division," Jake introduced. Evangeline managed to flash Jayden a smile. But before Jake could say more, Jayden pulled Evangeline into a hug, catching her off guard. Evangeline met Jake's eyes with widened gaze, but her bemusement shifted to warmth when Jayden said softly, "Thank you." Evangeline wondered just who the woman was to Jake. Aidan, returning from picking up Dr. Fields and Dr. Bennett, approached the gazebo and noticed Evangeline being embraced by a tall, slim woman with a short black hair. The woman's face was partially obscured as she leaned over Evangeline's petite frame. Aidan's brows furrowed in curiosity, unsure of who the woman was. When the stranger straightened, Aidan's frown deepened. Cassandra and Juliet, nodding their greetings as they passed by, continued walking toward the gazebo to join the gathering. As Aidan got closer, Jake, noticing the direction of Aidan's gaze, began to chuckle. He nudged Jayden, who looked up at him. Jake gestured toward Aidan, and Jayden followed his cue. Her eyes locked with Aidan's when he came within 7 feet. Aidan gaped at Jayden, his expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Can you guys stop being weird? I just let my hair grow, damn it," Jaden said irritably, rolling her eyes. Evangeline turned to see Aiden's bewildered expression and giggled, piecing together that Jaden didn't usually look like this. "Jaden, is that you? Dude, damn!" Aiden exclaimed, clearly thrown off. Jake burst out laughing. "Did you go through some sort of feminine transformation crab?" Aiden added, his tone incredulous. "Aiden," Jaden warned, her voice tinged with exasperation. "'Cause what?" he pressed. "Dude, what the hell?" Will interjected as he approached with Dr. Yen, his wide-eyed expression mirroring Aiden's. "That is Jaden." "Ah, Christ," Jaden muttered, clearly exasperated. "Guys, stop," Evangeline cut in, stepping forward. "You're making her uncomfortable." Jaden glanced at Evangeline, a subtle smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Jake, standing off to the side, watched the scene unfold with amusement. "Well, thank you, Mum," Jaden said to Evangeline, "but I'd rather not admit to that feeling or I'll never hear the end of it. They're all like annoying brothers I can't seem to get rid of." She raised her voice slightly so the group could hear. "I don't care what you did to it, reverse it," Aiden retorted. "I could hardly recognize you. Shit like that can get you killed." Evangeline walked up to Aiden and smacked him on the chest. Jake, shaking with laughter, turned away to hide his face. Jaden chuckled as she folded her arms across her chest. It was becoming evident why someone like Jake could fall for someone as warm and sunny as Dr. Hart. "Leave her alone," Evangeline told Aiden firmly. Aiden frowned, looking down at her diminutive height. Fighting back a laugh, he leaned in and said, "She looks weird." "As long as she likes it, you'll just have to suck it up," Yen chimed in, strolling over to stand beside Evangeline, glowering at Aiden. "I think I'm going to like it here," Jaden said to Jake, amusement evident in her voice. "They're all little warriors, aren't they?" Jake chuckled. Aiden arched an eyebrow at the pair and said, "I hope you can keep that energy when someone mistakes her for an intruder." His knowing look made the others chuckle. "Well, take a good look, everybody," Evangeline declared loudly, spinning for effect. The men scattered across the grounds laughed, clearly entertained. Then she smacked Aiden again and began to walk away triumphantly, only to nearly trip on the snow. Both Yen and Aiden caught her before she could fall. Evangeline giggled as Aiden frowned at her. "Can you at least stay on your feet?" he grumbled. She covered her mouth, still giggling. "I like the new look, Jaden." Charles called from where he stood by a tree chatting with Claire. "You look totally like a babe." Jaden groaned as laughter echoed across the grounds. "I'm going to murder you, Charles, if you ever call me that again, babe." Jaden threatened, her tone both warning and amused, prompting another wave of laughter. Andrew walked toward the gazebo, meeting Justin's gaze before gesturing for him to follow. Justin nodded and rose from his seat, trailing after Andrew. "Dad?" Justin called after him, his tone tinged with anxiety. "I'll be right back, buddy. Just stay close to Liam and Owen," Justin replied over his shoulder, his voice calm but firm. The boy hesitated briefly before nodding, watching his father disappear behind Andrew. Andrew signaled for Jake, Jaden and Charles to join him, and soon the four were heading toward the outdoor event structure. With the trampoline set up as a shield around the grounds, it wasn't easy to track how far the workers had progressed. They had been at it since morning and already received 2 truck deliveries, keeping the guards on edge. Andrew figured they would provide an update when they were finished. Justin tried to avoid looking in the direction of the new bodyguard, though it proved to be a challenge. Her presence seemed to carry an inexplicable energy, a magnetism that made it difficult to ignore. The other men continued joking with her, and although she sounded irritated, Justin could detect an undercurrent of playful camaraderie in her tone. Their banter reminded him of siblings squabbling, with Andrew naturally slipping into the role of the leader. When Andrew stopped and turned to face the group, he said, "All right, settle down, kids." Justin chuckled, but his attention instinctively shifted to her. He let his gaze linger on her profile, captivated. Her features were striking, smooth skin offset by faint, intricate scars. One ran through her right eyebrow, and another marked the tip of her full, well-shaped lips, adding an air of mystery to her appearance. Her high cheekbones lent elegance, while her delicate, slightly upturned nose softened her face. Her translucent light brown eyes, framed by naturally arched brows and thick lashes, seemed to hold an unspoken depth. Wisps of dark hair framed her face, and the curve of her neck, accentuated by her short haircut, gave her an understated grace. Justin felt his breath quicken as he watched her. He had never felt like this before, and the thought of being in proximity to her regularly was both thrilling and overwhelming. When she turned to look in his direction, Justin quickly looked away, shutting his eyes and silently praying she hadn't caught him staring. "Mr. Graham, please," Andrew began, gesturing for Justin to step forward. Justin moved a few steps closer, positioning himself beside Andrew. Then Andrew continued, "Jaden, I'd like you to meet Justin Graham. He's the father of the boy you're assigned to protect and an old schoolmate of both Dr. Hawthorne and Ethan Blackwood." Jaden stepped forward with long, purposeful strides, stopping a few feet from Justin and Andrew. Justin, standing at 6 feet 2 inches tall, silently appreciated his height more than ever. Even so, Jaden stood impressively close to his own stature, her presence commanding attention. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Graham," Jaden said, meeting Justin's gaze directly and holding it without hesitation. "Please call me Justin," he replied quickly. For a brief moment, the two locked eyes, an unspoken exchange passing between them before Andrew broke the silence. "This is Jaden Langston," Andrew began, gesturing towards her. "She's a former Navy SEAL and one of the most skilled operatives I've had the privilege of working with over the last decade. Jaden is highly trained in hand-to-hand combat, has exceptional proficiency with firearms, and possesses an uncanny ability to create explosives out of almost anything. She's resourceful, tactical, and relentless when it comes to her assignments." Andrew finished with a reassuring smile, looking between Jaden and Justin. "You can rest assured, Justin. She is more than capable of protecting Tristan." Justin nodded, thinking, holy cow, she's impressive. Then again, she had to be. She was one of Hawthorne's guards. He hadn't met a single one who wasn't impressive. If they weren't, they wouldn't be on Nate's payroll, he reasoned. He wondered what he was supposed to say to all that. Fighting wasn't exactly his strong suit, sure. He figured he could protect himself if the need arose. But he doubted Andrew's description of Jaden's combat skills involved the kind of testosterone-driven scuffling he had in mind. The only truly impressive thing he'd ever done was create art through his civil engineering drawings. Beyond that, his only claim to fame was being a decent enough cook. At least he hadn't poisoned himself or his son yet, and maybe he could say he was lucky at pushing through the tough situations. "I'm an architect," he said aloud before immediately regretting it. Andrew turned to him with a confused expression, clearly indicating that his line of work wasn't relevant to the conversation. Okay," Jaden replied, a slight hesitation in her voice. Justin caught the shift and cringed inwardly, thinking she might already think he was an idiot. "I'll introduce Tristan to you when we go back," he quickly added, trying to save face. "Sure," Jaden replied curtly. "Okay, now that we've gotten all the awkwardness out of our system, you should know something, Justin. Jaden is a terrible cook," Jake interjected with a grin. Jaden groaned and shut her eyes as Justin chuckled. Jake quickly added, "However, she's the best camping buddy anyone could ask for. She could make a rat taste like a gourmet." "I can't argue with that," Charles chimed in, stepping forward to stand beside Jaden. Without warning, he seized her by the neck, steadying her head with one arm while pulling out a handkerchief in the other. "What the?" Jaden exclaimed. But before she could finish, Charles was already attempting to wipe her eyebrows. Thinking he'd caught her wearing makeup, Charles grinned. "Hold still!" Jaden growled, wrapping her arms around Charles's waist. In one fluid motion, she lifted him off the ground. The group erupted into laughter as Charles twisted in her grasp, managing to slip free like a slippery monkey. He landed behind her and tried to dart away, but Jaden kicked the back of his legs, sending him sprawling into the snow. "Idiot!" she snarled, advancing on him as he held up the handkerchief like a shield. "You're not wearing makeup? What the hell did you do?" Charles yelped, laughing nervously as he scrambled backward. Andrew groaned, face-palming. Jake doubled over in a belly laugh as Jaden loomed over Charles, her eyes blazing. Jaden glowered at Charles. "I like to trim my eyebrows along with my hair." "Get off my back," she protested. "This is all wrong," Charles muttered, looking genuinely traumatized. Andrew turned to Justin, catching him staring at Jaden with wide eyes. "Did you see her lift him?" Justin asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Andrew chuckled, clearly amused. Justin couldn't take his eyes off Jaden. He was pretty sure Charles, with his height and build, weighed no less than 265 pounds. Holy hell, Justin thought to himself. After a few minutes of light banter, Andrew waved everyone off and began walking toward the entryway of the construction site. Charles followed closely behind him, with Jake in tow. "Guys, where will I be staying?" Jaden called after them. "Justin's," Jake replied over his shoulder. Justin felt his heart slam against his chest. What? The word echoed in his mind. He wanted to object, vehemently, but before he could speak, Charles glanced back and added, "Could you take care of her, Justin? Show her the routine while you introduce her to Tristan, since they're going to be inseparable." Justin swallowed hard, guilt creeping in. While he'd been thinking about his own inconvenience, he had momentarily forgotten that Jaden was there to protect his son. He nodded and said, "Sure." Now that it was just the two of them, Justin flashed Jaden a smile and gestured for her to walk with him. Jaden matched his pace, catching him off guard when she said, "I was briefed about Tristan's medical condition. I'll assist every day I can." Justin held her gaze for what felt like an unhealthy amount of time before nodding and looking ahead. "I suppose you were also briefed about his mother and why we need a bodyguard," he asked, giving her a sidelong glance. Jaden nodded. "Yes, Mr. Graham," she replied. "Justin, please, I insist," he said quickly, his voice firm and husky. "It feels inappropriate to call you by your first name," Jaden said, her tone neutral. "I don't care about appropriateness right now, Jaden. We should be friends. That's the best way this is going to work," Justin said firmly. Jaden nodded. "All right, Justin," she replied. Neither of them realized they had stopped walking until they resumed their pace together. "Tristan's mother's name is Pamela Anderson," Justin said, his tone darkening. "We can never leave Tristan alone with her." "Noted," Jaden replied. Walking side by side with her to join the others, Justin felt a sense of peace he couldn't remember ever experiencing. It was both unsettling and disheartening. For so long, he had buried his own needs, desires, and wants, all in the name of providing peace. After living that way for so long, he found himself in a strange position, unable to believe he was free from that entrapment. At any moment, he feared that Pamela might show up and say or do something that would force him and Tristan to return to the hollow life they had been living for years. He thought Ethan was right. The other man might have been brutal in his comments, but that didn't make them any less true. Justin recalled the time years ago when he met Ethan outside the diner where his mother worked. Ethan had been lounging on one of the cars he and his friends had brought from Harvard. Although they weren't exactly best of friends, Ethan had looked across the field at him after greeting him and said, "You are one of the dumbest idiots I've met." Justin had been taken aback by the comment, looking around to see if Ethan was speaking to someone else, but there was no one nearby. He touched his hand to his chest in confusion and laughed awkwardly. "Are you talking to me, Blackwood?" he'd asked. Ethan shook his head, pointing at the ground at Justin's shadow. "Nah, I'm talking to your shadow," he retorted. "What did I do to you, man?" Justin asked, not wanting any trouble with Ethan. He thought Ethan was a troubled kid and wondered how Ariana had ever befriended him. He was rude, blunt, arrogant, dismissive, and even more so after he went to college and started associating with Nathaniel Hawthorne. "I heard you want to marry Pamela Anderson?" Ethan asked, his tone laced with mockery. Justin shrugged. "Yeah, I love her, man." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Whose idea was that? Yours or hers, Graham? Did you decide you love her? Or did she tell you you should be loving on her because she's pretty, awesome, and an Anderson?" Ethan mocked. "I'm going to go," Justin said, a bit annoyed at Ethan and his jeering. He thought to himself that if he had let that uncomfortable feeling Ethan had provoked fester, he probably wouldn't have married Pamela, but a voice in his head reminded him that if that had been the case, he wouldn't have his son either. "I believe you're supposed to give me some kind of schedule," Jaden said, pulling Justin out of his thoughts. He looked at her and held her gaze for a moment before her words fully registered. "Yes," he said in a low, husky tone, then repeated the word as the meaning sank in. "Yes, a schedule for Tristan," he mused aloud. I get him ready early enough for breakfast. Breakfast is at 8 a.m. here, so everyone needs to be in the main building," he explained, pointing to the imposing log house up ahead. "After breakfast, Arya, that's, Dr. Hawthorne, has assigned a nurse to Tristan. Her name is Nurse Esther, and she takes him to the infirmary," he added, gesturing towards the makeshift hospital. "She gives him his medication, injection, and then brings him back to play with Owen and Liam, or do whatever the boys have planned. Lunch is at 1 p.m, and there's some kind of late lunch available for anyone interested. Miss Jonas will have plates ready. Dinner is at 7 p.m, and after that..." His voice trailed off as he gestured toward the gazebo coming into view. "If the Hawthornes decide they want a party, then a party we shall have," he quipped. "It sounds like what we're being denied in New York," Jaden commented. Justin paused mid-stride, giving her a searching look. "Did I just goof?" he asked, inwardly cringing. Jaden shook her head, smiling. "I'm just kidding. I'm sure the boss has plans to continue the tradition when we all return to New York." She paused, holding his gaze. "Andrew told me I'm going to be here for as long as they are," she began. Justin chuckled and nodded. "I know the arrangement is temporary if we choose to stay here, but..." His voice trailed off as he glanced toward the gazebo. There, Tristan was with Liam and Owen, eating, laughing, and having fun. "Tristan is still under observation, and I believe Arya wants him close. So as long as my son needs me, we'll be going back to New York with the Hawthornes." When Justin looked back at Jaden, he caught her watching him. She quickly looked away and nodded. Joining the others, Tristan called out to his dad, asking him to watch as he and Liam attempted to fit entire cupcakes into their mouths. Owen stood aside, observing the two with an expression that clearly suggested he thought they had lost their minds. Justin chuckled and said, "Let's try not to choke on cake now. We're all here to have fun." Liam grinned, cake stuck in his mouth and between his teeth. Owen let out an exasperated sigh, grabbed a serviette, and held it out to Liam's mouth with a pointed look. Liam reluctantly spit the cupcake into the serviette, and Owen, screwing up his nose, walked over to toss it into the trash can. "Hello, Owen," Jaden called out, smiling at the serious little boy. "Hello, Aunt Jaden," he replied with comical weariness. "Hello, Aunt Jaden," Liam greeted, his voice muffled as he munched another piece of cake. Jaden chuckled, reaching forward to ruffle his hair. "Looks like you're already friends with the boys, so this should be easy," Justin murmured to Jaden before saying, "Tristan, come here. Let me introduce Aunt Jaden to you." He gestured for Tristan to join him and also beckoned to Owen and Liam. The three followed Justin and Jaden to a quieter part of the gazebo. "Did something happen?" Tristan asked apprehensively. "Nothing happened. Uncle Andrew just thought you might need someone special to watch over you, especially with the carnival coming up," Justin explained as he sat down and drew Tristan close, giving the boy a level gaze. "You mean like a bodyguard?" Owen chimed in, glancing at Tristan. "Yes, like a special bodyguard," Justin clarified. "Is Aunt Jaden going to be Tristan's special bodyguard?" Liam asked, his curiosity piqued. "Yes, that's right," Justin replied. All three boys turned their gazes to Jaden, who waved awkwardly. "Hey," she said, lifting her chin slightly to appear confident. Tristan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned into his dad and whispered, "But she's a girl." Justin chuckled. "I saw her tackle Uncle Charles. True story," he added in a conspiratorial whisper. Tristan's eyes widened as he glanced back at Jaden, who was trying to maintain a friendly demeanor, though her smile seemed a bit stiff. She took a seat opposite Justin. "How come you don't want to be our bodyguard, Aunt Jaden?" Liam asked, narrowing his eyes as he and Owen sat beside her. "I'm still your special bodyguard, just like your uncle's," Jaden explained. "We're just borrowing my services for Tristan for a bit." "I guess it's okay if it's temporary. You'll still be here with us, right?" Owen asked. "Of course," Jaden replied with a reassuring smile. On the other side of the gazebo, Justin leaned closer to Tristan and asked in a quiet tone, "So what do you think? Are you ready to give her a shot? She'll be staying with us in our cottage." Tristan shrugged, glancing back at Jaden as she spoke with Owen and Liam. "Would you like to go say hello and introduce yourself, or should I do it?" Justin whispered to Tristan. "I guess it's better if I do it so she knows I'm not a baby, you know," Tristan whispered back. "Of course, son. Go on. Go for it," Justin encouraged. "All right, Dad," Tristan replied, then added, "Thanks, Dad," before moving away to cross to the other side. Justin felt a little strange at Tristan's expression of gratitude. It wasn't something his son typically did, and he silently cursed himself, wondering why he hadn't thought to do something about taking him off his toxic environment sooner. "Mum, I'm Tristan Graham," Justin heard Tristan say tentatively to Jaden. The hesitation in his son's voice made Justin's heart clench with emotion. Jaden smiled at the little boy, and this time it wasn't an act. "Damn it," she cursed silently. "Don't get attached." "Don't get attached," she repeated to herself. "How are you doing, Tristan?" Jaden asked, extending her hand for a handshake. Tristan placed his small hand in hers, and she gave it a firm shake. "I'm Owen and Liam's friend," Tristan pointed out, emphasizing the connection, as if it might earn him more favor with their Aunt Jaden. Owen leaned close to Jaden and whispered in her ear, "He is scared. Be extra nice. Aunt Jaden." Jaden smiled and nodded before turning her attention back to Tristan as Owen drew away. "I hope you'll consider calling me your friend too, Tristan. I'd really like that," Jaden said warmly. Tristan gave her a shy smile in response. At the other end of the gazebo, Nathaniel was laughing at something Alex had said when Andrew arrived with Jake, Charles, Aidan, and Anton, accompanied by Sheriff Logan on a tour. Nathaniel's grey eyes darted between the men, trying to gauge if something significant had happened. Andrew's deep, mellow tone broke the silence. "Boss, it's done." "Oh." Nathaniel's eyes involuntarily flicked to Arya, who was watching him intently. He winked at her, excused himself, and got up from her side. Arya held back a giggle. She could sense Nathaniel was up to something, and her curiosity about what they were plotting was piqued. As Nathaniel left the gazebo, Ethan and Alex followed closely behind. Anna quickly took the seat beside Arya, and Anita joined them. Evangeline giggled from her spot, watching the ladies gather together. "You know what? Let's make a run for it. It's not like they can physically stop us, right?" Anna suggested, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I'm telling you, it's easier now than waiting until everyone goes to sleep. I can't see Nate letting you randomly wander outside without an escort," Anita added. "You're actually right about that," Arya replied thoughtfully. As the women continued strategizing, Arya's gaze drifted toward the men gathered at a considerable distance from the gazebo, talking in hushed tones. Sheriff Logan kept glancing toward the gazebo, stretching his neck as if hoping to catch a glimpse of someone. Arya stifled a giggle, knowing he was looking for her aunt, who was inside with the babies and Miss Bella. "I keep saying we should make a run for it," Anna insisted, dismissing every plan that involved waiting until later. Isla covered her mouth, trying to muffle her laughter. Anita can't run, Claire can't run, and Eva definitely can't run either," Arya replied with a grin. "So we'll need a car," she added in a whisper. Her eyes scanned the area for someone who could help. Then she spotted Jaden sitting at the far end of the gazebo. A broad grin spread across her face. "See that lady over there?" Arya said to Anna, gesturing in Jaden's direction. "Let's recruit her. She can help us." Arya stood and all the women followed, including Evangeline. "What's going on?" Adam, who had a clear view of the gazebo, asked as he noticed the ladies heading toward Jaden. Nathaniel started to turn and look, but Jake stopped him, chuckling. "Don't look," Jake said, trying to suppress a laugh. Jaden stood up as she saw the ladies approaching, a frown furrowing her brows. "Ma'am," she said in bemusement, "Jaden, I need you to find a car and drive us just to the other side of the grounds without letting anyone stop us," Arya requested. Yes, ma'am," Jaden replied. Anna and Evangeline squealed with excitement. Justin, who had been sitting quietly in a corner, tried not to laugh, remembering the earlier threat. Jaden fought to suppress a smile. Arya then called for Liam and Owen, and when the two boys rushed over to stand beside her, Arya used her hands to frame their faces. "I have a mission for the two of you. There's something we need to see, and we don't want your dad following us, so you've got to do something to stop him," Arya said. Liam grinned and Owen looked concerned. Arya clarified, "I mean, maybe some play." "Acting?" She winked at them. Owen sighed in relief. Arya chuckled and pressed kisses on their foreheads, then did the same with Tristan. When she straightened, Jaden said, "This way," and led the ladies through the back of the gazebo. The women hurried off toward one of the Hawthorne guards' jeeps, and when Jake, Adam, and Nathaniel noticed the gazebo was quiet, they stepped away from the gathering to peer inside. They found the interior empty, except for Justin, who was at the far end with the boys. When Liam saw Jake and his dad peering in, he collapsed on the floor, clutching his stomach. "My stomach," he moaned, then let out a dramatic cough before starting to shake. Nathaniel, joining Jake, hurried over but paused when he saw Owen and Tristan trying to help Liam sit up, both of them saying, "Oh, help us," as they struggled with him. Nathaniel fought to hold back his laughter, his eyes watering as he tried not to laugh. Jake, deciding to play along, picked Liam up and said, "Oh my God, we need a doctor." Liam coughed harder for emphasis, and Jake nearly laughed and fought hard to suppress it. Rowan and William, who had just joined the family in the gazebo, saw Jake holding Liam and saying they needed a doctor. Exchanging a worried glance, they hurried over to where Jake stood with Nathaniel, Owen, Tristan, and Justin. Rowan was initially perplexed as to why Nathaniel didn't seem distraught upon hearing that one of his sons required medical attention. However, as he got closer, he noticed Liam Hawthorne's overly dramatic wheezing and how Nathaniel briefly looked away to suppress a laugh. Justin Graham didn't appear particularly concerned either. Lowering his gaze to the little rascal, Rowan quickly deduced that Liam was acting. Nevertheless, he cleared his throat to announce his presence and asked in a serious tone, "What's wrong, buddy?" Liam noticed him and responded, "My stomach hurts. It feels like the cake is eating my stomach," he managed to say before adding an exaggerated, open-mouthed cough for effect. "Oh, you poor little one," William said in a solemn tone. He was well accustomed to Liam Hawthorne's antics and instinctively played along, wondering what the mischievous Nathaniel's miniature was up to this time. "He probably has gastroesophageal reflux disease. Too much cake can trigger acid reflux, leading to heartburn or vomiting," Owen stated. Upon hearing this, Liam attempted to act as if he was about to throw up. "Yeah, what Owen said," Tristan interjected enthusiastically. Owen then suggested, "We should take him to the infirmary." He paused, directed his gaze toward his father, and added in a deceptively sweet tone, "Don't you think so, Daddy?" Nathaniel cleared his throat. "Yeah, we should do that," he agreed. "You're so smart, Owen. Nice diagnosis. Perhaps one day you could join us at Evergreen Memorial," Rowan chimed in as Jake moved to head out, still carrying Liam. Nathaniel picked Owen up while Justin carried Tristan. "No, sorry, Dr. Rowan. Blood and gore is sadly not my thing," Owen said in a firm, no-nonsense tone. Nathaniel grinned, amused by how grown-up Owen sounded. "Maybe you'll change your mind in a few years," William suggested with a smile in Owen's direction. "Not likely," Owen replied. After figuring out where the ladies had gone, Andrew fell into step beside Nathaniel and remarked, "I guess they couldn't wait." Nathaniel immediately understood the implication behind Andrew's vague comment. "A few minutes head start should be enough," he said with a mischievous grin. Owen glanced between his father and his uncle, his gaze sharp with curiosity. Nathaniel met his eyes without flinching. "Don't worry, your brother is fine," Nathaniel said in an attempt to divert attention. Owen narrowed his eyes at the statement. Nathaniel quickly looked away, clearing his throat to maintain his composure. Once they arrived at the infirmary, Rowan instructed Jake to lay Liam on the examination table. Jake did so without hesitation. Then, in an attempt to sell the moment, asked, "Is he going to be all right, Doc?" He infused just enough worry into his voice while noting how Liam's lips quivered, fighting off a smirk. The little rascal was clearly having the time of his life. "No need to worry. We'll just run some tests to make sure this isn't food poisoning or contamination," William added. "Exactly," Rowan agreed before turning to say, "Dr. Williams, could you hand me that syringe over there?" Liam's eyes snapped open, widening in alarm. "Oh boy," Owen muttered under his breath. "This isn't good," Tristan murmured as Dr. Williams handed Rowan a syringe, one meant for adults rather than children. "There has to be another way," Owen protested, no longer amused by where this was going. "They need to take a blood sample to determine what's causing his reaction," Nathaniel explained, his expression neutral. "I can't watch this," Tristan cried out, his voice tinged with both horror and distress. "Owen!" Liam called hesitantly, seeking help. Owen wiggled out of his father's arms and rushed to the examination table. He grabbed Liam's arm, pulled him off the bed, and raised his hand in triumph. "Hallelujah, he is healed!" Liam nodded with an exaggeratedly serious expression and declared, "It's a miracle! Jesus strikes again!" Tristan, catching on, exclaimed, "Yes!" When the three boys noticed the adults watching them with skeptical expressions, Tristan leaned into Liam, who stood in the middle, and whispered, "This is when we run." The trio began to back away. "Man, that was fantastic. I'll be sure to leave a review and recommend Dr. Owen for his outstanding work. And of course, you too, Dr. Williams." "Great. Great men," Liam said, gesturing with his hands, his tone overly appreciative. "I especially loved how you held that syringe, Dr. Owen," he added. "Like a pro," Owen chimed in. "Dr. Owen, how long have you been practicing? Even my mum can't pull that off." "Boys, is there something you want to tell me?" Nathaniel asked, in a tone that warned them not to run. "Ah, what are you talking about?" Owen responded, his tone laced with disbelief as he let out a forced laugh. "You have to believe in possibilities, Daddy," Liam insisted. "Boys," Nathaniel repeated with an arched eyebrow. The moment they reached the door, all three sprinted out of the infirmary, yelling, "We will never snitch!" Laughter echoed throughout the room. Nathaniel shook his head, chuckling. "Good Lord, to think I still have 3 more of them," he muttered, making everyone laugh even harder. Rowan grinned and asked, "What was that about?" Amusement laced his tone. "They're stalling for their mom," Jake replied with a chuckle. Rowan burst into laughter. "Wait, where did Dr. Hawthorne go?" William asked, laughing at the realization. "Let's go find out," Nathaniel said with a devilish grin as he motioned to Jake and Andrew. The 3 men headed outside, with Justin following them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the grounds, Jaden drove the ladies to the front of the trampoline-shielded structure and led them towards it. Noticing a mechanical lever beside the structure, attached to electrical panels, Jaden guessed that must be the light switch. "Please, hold on," she said over her shoulder as she hurried toward the lever, using a flashlight to read the instructions and ensure she wasn't about to electrocute herself on her first day of a new mission. She pulled the lever only once she was certain it was safe, and light flooded the entire structure, both inside and out. A smile spread across the ladies' faces, accompanied by an "oh" as they admired the sight. The event marquee wasn't the regular kind. This one was sleek and modern, with transparent glass panels framed by sturdy aluminum, creating an airy ambience, giving the illusion of the outdoors merging beautifully with the interior. It was as if the glass barrier didn't even exist. As they stepped inside, the glass took on a darker hue, suggesting it was one-way transparent, offering privacy from the outside while remaining clear from within. Arya's smile brightened. The interior was divided into several spacious enclosures, equally shared on each side, creating personalized zones. At the center of the tent, an open space was reserved for a raised stage with an opulent yet functional design. Ample space surrounded it, keeping it wide and open from the partitioned glass sections and the opera-like aesthetics of balconies overlooking the center stage. Lanterns hung elegantly from the atrium ceiling, their glow casting reflections that extended both inward and outward. The light created an illusion of shimmering stars merging with the night sky, seamlessly blending with the gentle descent of snowflakes. Oohs and ahs filled the expansive space as the ladies spoke in whispers, as if they feared that speaking too loudly might disrupt the cozy ambience. "This is art," Cassandra whispered in awe, her soft voice filled with pleasure. Drifting away from the others, Arya wandered toward one of the enclosures, slowly opening the door. At first glance, she couldn't help but giggle at the setup. The room featured an elegant, cozy dining area set for 2. In one corner, a rectangular dining table sat surrounded by plush floor cushions in warm shades of red and neutral tones, replacing chairs and giving the space an informal yet sophisticated vibe. Above the table, 3 large, intricately designed pendant lamps emitted a warm glow, casting soft shadows and enhancing the cozy ambience. The glass walls in the background offered a view of the outdoor setting of colorful, exotic flowers and an endless plain of snow. Shelves along the wall were adorned with decorative items and unlit accents, contributing to the overall warmth and charm of the space. Walking inside, she paused at the arched entryway leading to the inner chamber of the open-floor makeshift bathroom. The space featured a standalone bathtub positioned in one corner, flanked by recessed shelving that held unlit candles and decorative items. Beside it, a glass-enclosed shower area with modern fixtures stood adjacent to a ladder-style rack, where neatly arranged towels contributed to the overall aesthetic. Opposite the bathtub, a double sink vanity with a polished surface and vessel sinks offered functionality, with open storage beneath holding neatly folded towels. A large mirror spanned the wall above the vanity, reflecting the soft lighting and enhancing the room's depth. Elegant touches included a cascading chandelier above the bathtub and a bouquet of white flowers on the countertop, lending the space a refined yet inviting feel. In one corner, a massage table added to the spa-like ambience. Returning outside, the ladies hurried towards her, and Anna jumped with excitement. "This is so beautiful," she squealed. Aria chuckled. "It sure is," she replied. "What do you think they built the center stage for? Because I'm sure Nate didn't have that installed for male strippers." Anita chimed in, making the ladies laugh. "Maybe karaoke," Noria suggested. All the ladies nodded in agreement. "That makes sense. It would explain the screen in that corner," Dawn remarked, gesturing toward a partially hidden space at the far end of the expansive area. "Is there some kind of dress code? And are we even invited, boss?" Juliet quipped. "Of course you and Cassandra are invited, Juliet," Aria replied. "Thanks, boss," the two women responded. "A dress code sounds like a good idea. We should totally have one," Dawn remarked with barely contained excitement. Evangeline cleared her throat to draw everyone's attention and with a grimace pointed to her stomach, making the ladies laugh. "Don't worry, Evangeline, I got you. If we say yes to costumes, we'll all get to choose what we want to be and embody it," Aria reassured her. "Oh, don't give me ideas, Aria," Anita replied excitedly. "Do we still have time to shop for costumes?" Isla asked with a smile. "Girl, look around you. I'm beginning to think anything is possible at this point," Yen quipped, making everyone laugh. "I know just the place where we can get ready-to-wear costumes, and they can tailor them to our sizes if needed. We just have to get Andrew on board," Anna added. "When is the party?" Claire asked with interest. "This weekend," Aria responded, shifting her gaze between Anna and Anita. After all, the party was meant to celebrate them and their partners. "That's in 3 days," Anna said, beaming with a smile. "Can we get costumes that fast? Because aside from that," Aria began and then paused, gesturing around the marquee tent before adding, "We're set. Unlike before, we now have a venue and food, of course," she added. "Are we going to invite the guys?" Dawn asked with a smile. "We will, but only after we're done with our own fun," Anna replied. "You do realize this venue is going to make it easier to sneak out of the ranch," Anita added with a giggle. After a few minutes of plotting, they headed toward the exit. Aria noticed Jaden standing watch by the entrance and beamed at the taller woman. As she approached, she said, "Thanks, Jaden." Jaden nodded with a smile. "You're most welcome, Mom," she replied. "I hope it goes without saying that you're invited," Aria added as they stepped outside. Jaden smiled to herself without responding. She wasn't sure how family-friendly Dr. Hawthorne's party was supposed to be, but she would likely be on duty, especially keeping an eye on Tristan if external guests were invited. She figured the only way she'd be able to attend was if Tristan was going to be there as well. Outside, Jaden stood by the entrance, waiting for everyone to exit the building before locking the doors. She then hurried to switch off the lights by pulling down the lever. As they moved about 50 meters away from the structure, a sudden flood of flashlight beams engulfed them, stopping them in their tracks. A booming voice followed. "Freeze! Who goes there?" It was Anton. Andrew, Nathaniel, Aiden, Jake, and Charles strode forward, and Nathaniel smirked. "What do we have here? A bunch of intruders." Aria burst into giggles as Dawn and Anna shouted, "Run for your life!" With a dramatic sigh, Evangeline lowered herself onto the snow-covered ground, lay back, and gradually moved her arms and legs to form a snow angel. Aria, Anita, Dawn, and Anna dropped to their knees beside her, laughing. Nathaniel crossed his arms, watching as Aria joined in with a smile. Shaking his head, he ran his fingers through his hair. "At least now I have proof for everyone to see that I'm not the only reason our boys are mischievous, Ariana." Nathaniel said, prompting the men to laugh even harder. "We don't like secrets," Arya called out, continuing to move her arms and legs in the snow, creating an angel as fresh flakes fell on her and the other women. "No, we don't," Anna echoed, with Anita quickly joining in. Grinning, Evangeline shouted, "We will not be suppressed." "Freedom," Noria added enthusiastically. Nathaniel shook with laughter. Jake couldn't stop grinning at the sight of his usually shy Evangeline openly misbehaving, and it was clear who had set off this wave of rebellion, Dr. Hawthorne, their fearless leader. Her uninhibited nature had influenced the rest, even the newest recruits, Dr. Sterling, Dr. Fields, Dr. Bennett, and Dr. Yen, who were already participating. Jaden stood off to the side, struggling to keep a straight face, but when Evangeline, between giggles, admitted, I might need help getting up before we get that freedom, though, she burst into laughter. Standing behind Aiden, Justin watched Jaden with a quiet smile. She seemed like an entirely different person when she laughed. Her face alight, her eyes gleaming with mirth. "Get off the snow before you catch your death," Dr. Williams admonished as he and Rowan approached. "Yes, Doctor," the women responded in unison, reluctantly beginning to get up. Rowan chuckled at their obedient reply, observing the light-hearted scene before him. He and Dr. Williams had noticed the floodlights of the vehicles illuminating the grounds as they exited the infirmary. Curious and hoping everything was in order, they had made their way over. Seeing the women playing in the snow while the men stood by laughing, the two doctors exchanged a knowing glance. "I suppose this was what Liam was trying to keep his father from seeing," Rowan mused, chuckling. "You don't know the half of it. That boy was born mischievous, just like his father," Dr. Williams quipped. Rowan chuckled, his gaze shifting between Nathaniel and Ariana. She was now assisting Dawn in helping Dr. Hart to her feet. The way Nathaniel watched his wife, his expression soft with quiet admiration, made it evident just how much he adored her. Rowan looked away, exhaling softly. He knew he would never stop wishing he could be in Nathaniel Hawthorne's place, to call someone like Ariana his wife, to love and be loved by her. But he was realistic enough to accept the truth. Nathaniel was her perfect match, and even the universe seemed to have blessed their union. There was no point in hoping the former notorious womanizer would slip up and create an opening for him. It was time to move on. His thoughts drifted to Grace Hamilton. Though he had yet to make his intentions clear, he wondered if she might be open to being with someone older. He was in his late 30s, and she couldn't be more than 22. Yet she had given him enough attention for him to suspect she might be interested. Grace Hamilton wasn't Ariana Everly, the brilliant intern he had fallen for all those years ago, but she was intelligent, beautiful, and composed. He resolved to pursue her, to see if there was a chance for something real. Otherwise, he might just end up alone. The morbid thought made him chuckle to himself. Meanwhile, about half a kilometer away, Sheriff Logan, who had asked to see Ian Blackwood while waiting for Nathaniel and the others to return, was led to the cottage where the man was resting. Upon entering, Sheriff Logan couldn't help but take in the cabin's interior before his eyes settled on the bed where Ian lay. A woman, whom Sheriff Logan guessed must be a nurse, was administering something into Ian's IV line. The room had a warm, rustic atmosphere, with thick wooden beams supporting the vaulted ceiling and weathered wooden walls that added an earthy character. A large stone fireplace dominated one side of the room, its flames flickering warmly beneath a mantel adorned with a framed painting of a serene landscape. The bed, positioned prominently in the center, was layered with cozy bedding and a fur throw. To one side, a cushioned window seat overlooked the snowy outdoors, offering a peaceful view. A chandelier made of wrought iron and candles hung overhead, casting a soft, ambient glow. The furniture was an elegant mix of natural wood and leather, blending seamlessly with the cabin's overall aesthetic. The rich tones of the wooden floor were softened by a patterned area rug, grounding the room with a touch of color. Sheriff Logan took a step further into the room, his attention shifting back to Ian as the nurse adjusted the IV line with quiet focus. He thought Ian looked far less scary than when he was rescued from Diana and her hellish brood. He was happy for him, happy that, even though he had lost 3 supposed sons, he had gained one who, by the look of it, was worth more than a dozen. "How's it going, Ian?" Sheriff Logan called out, drawing the other man's attention. Ian looked in his direction and his eyes brightened. "Patrick, what are you doing here at this hour?" Ian asked with a smile. But then, as if realizing that Logan was a police officer and his visit might not be a social call, his expression shifted, his brows knit with concern. "Did something happen?" he asked suddenly, trying to sit up, only for the nurse to stop him. "Now calm down, Ian," Sheriff Logan said quickly, holding up his hands as he approached the bed. "Everything's fine. I'm just making a social call," he added. Ian exhaled and apologized to the nurse. "It's okay, Mr. Blackwood, but try to take things easy. You just underwent major surgery," the nurse reminded him, before greeting the sheriff and leaving. Ash, who had been standing by the door, followed her out. "Thank you for checking in on me, Patrick. I really appreciate it," Ian said. Sheriff Logan nodded in acknowledgement as he moved to sit by the window seat. Peering out, he took in the serene view of a garden bathed in soft light. He smiled. "No need to thank me. I was already here," he replied with a sheepish smile. "Did something happen?" Ian asked again. Sheriff Logan sighed. "How many hours you got?" he quipped. Ian chuckled. "That bad, huh?" he replied. "Justin Graham decided to divorce Pamela Anderson," Sheriff Logan said. Ian visibly cringed, making Sheriff Logan chuckle. "Yup, you know it. She went all crazy on him. Unfortunately, she did it here on Everly property, and her husband wasn't having it," Sheriff Logan continued, telling Ian about the drama he had endured since the Hawthornes came to town. "Don't forget that I still have Diana and her sons in custody, unable to make bail because of the charges," Sheriff Logan added. "What are they being charged with?" Ian asked out of curiosity. "There's the conspiracy to kill you, for starters, and the attempted murder of Ethan and Miss Devereaux," Sheriff Logan began to explain. But Ian cut in. "That accident in New York? Is there evidence to back that up, or does Ethan just suspect it was Ben?" he asked, probing with keen interest. Sheriff Logan hesitated, noting Ian's anxious gaze before finally saying, "Yes, Ian, they have camera footage of Benedict behind the wheel of the car that caused the accident." Ian nodded to himself as he looked away. For about a minute, he didn't say anything while Sheriff Logan continued to speak. "How much is the bail, Patrick?" Ian suddenly asked. Sheriff Logan sighed. "Don't meddle, Ian. Let the law take its course," he cautioned, knowing exactly what Ian was trying to do. "If they make bail, they can walk, right?" Ian replied, his voice carrying a hard edge. "Yes," Sheriff Logan reluctantly admitted. "So how am I meddling, Patrick? You think that after everything, after planning to kill me and heading to New York to go after my son, Ben is just going to give up, especially now that he's lost everything?" Ian shot back. "Once they face trial and get carted away from here," Sheriff Logan began. "I'm going to pretend you didn't just sound that ignorant, assuming Ben or his mother can be stopped just by getting them out of our sight. I want them outside, and I would very much like them to try and kill my son again," Ian said in a low, angry growl. "Ian!" Sheriff Logan tried to interject, but Ian didn't let him. "This one time, Patrick, this one fucking time, let me at least help my boy. It's my fault he's in this mess in the first place," Ian said through gritted teeth. "He's protected. Hawthorne's got his back." "They can't touch him," Sheriff Logan assured him. "Good." "How much is the bail for my family, Sheriff Logan?" Ian demanded in a firm, formal tone. "God, you are stubborn," Sheriff Logan muttered, blaming himself for bringing up the topic of Diana and her sons. He then told Ian the bail amount the judge had set for Diana and her 3 sons. Outside the cottage, Ash lingered in the shadows, listening intently. When Sheriff Logan finished his visit with Ian, he stepped outside and saw Ash waiting. "The boss is returning to the house," Ash said without looking in the sheriff's direction, gesturing towards the incoming jeeps. Sheriff Logan's face lit up. Suppose I can see Miss Everly before I head out," he said as he joined Ash. When he saw the young man meet his gaze, he added, "You know how it is when a man catches the bug," he quipped. "No, I don't," Ash replied with a straight face. Sheriff Logan chuckled. "Give it a few years, kid," the older man said, still chuckling. Just across the field, Nathaniel stepped out of his jeep and extended a hand to help Arya down. He did the same for Evangeline, Anna, and Anita before returning to take Arya's hand, interlocking his fingers with hers and guiding her inside to escape the cold. In the living room, Owen and Liam were with their big mama, Miss Everly, and Tom Hill. The adults laughed when Liam squealed upon seeing his dad and hid behind Grandpa Hill. But when Owen noticed their mom was with him, he called out to Liam to look. When Liam saw his mom, he peeked out and grinned. Arya giggled and beckoned the twins and Tristan. The boys approached, and Arya pressed kisses to their faces, cooing, "My precious knights, thank you for holding the fort." The boys grinned proudly. Mom, Dad didn't know. We fooled him," Liam announced. "No, you didn't," Nathaniel replied with mock offense, causing everyone to laugh. "Nah, we did too," Liam countered. And Uncle Jake was like, "Oh, we need a doctor," Liam continued, mimicking Jake's deep voice. Jake frowned at him. "We weren't fooled at all," he shot back, feigning irritation. "It's okay, Uncle Jake, it's an honest mistake," Owen added, grinning. "Is this kid gaslighting me?" Jake thought in amusement. When Evangeline kissed Liam, Tristan, and Owen on the forehead, calling them super agents, Owen raised a suggestive eyebrow at Jake. Nathaniel, catching the gesture, laughed. "That's my boy right there," he whispered to Arya, who playfully swatting him on the stomach. "I've never felt like punching a little kid as much as I do right now," Jake muttered, glowering at Owen, who remained unfazed. Andrew and Aidan joined Nathaniel, laughing along. Ethan and Alex entered with the other ladies, and the room was filled with soft laughter and voices. "Boss?" Ash called from behind Nathaniel, Andrew, Charles, and Jake. The men turned to see Ash with Sheriff Logan. "Oh my. Sheriff Logan, you're still here," Nathaniel said, surprised and apologetic. "Yeah, I went to see Ian. Thought I'd stop by before heading out," the older man replied, just before Miss Everly greeted him with, "Hello, Patrick." Ash noticed Sheriff Logan's face redden, and he frowned at him. "Excuse me," Sheriff Logan said to Nathaniel and made his way across the room toward Miss Everly. Aidan, standing in his path, made him look up at him. Sheriff Logan gave an awkward smile before stepping around him to continue across the room. Arya, standing next to Anita, leaned over and whispered, "He's so smitten," as she made kissy faces. Anita giggled. Meanwhile, Ash signaled for Andrew to follow him and walked away. Andrew hesitated before following, with Jake trailing behind. Aidan's gaze remained fixed on Sheriff Logan. Ash moved to the far end of the room and waited. When Andrew and Jake joined him, he said in a low, hushed voice, "Ian Blackwood is planning to pay the bail for his wife and stepsons." Andrew and Jake exchanged a concerned look, brows furrowing. "To what end?" Jake asked. Ash met his gaze and waited for understanding to settle in. "He's one hell of a ruthless man," Andrew remarked as they stood side by side facing the others gathered near the fire on the other side of the living room. When Nathaniel saw Andrew and Jake with Ash, he moved toward them. "Any news?" he asked, intrigued. "Ian Blackwood is playing a dangerous game, boss," Andrew began, his brow furrowing in thought. Nathaniel let out a sigh. "What game is the old man playing now?" he asked, slipping his hands into the pockets of his pants before turning to face the direction where Ethan was with the rest of the family. "He's trying to set his ex-wife and her children loose, hoping they'll come after Blackwood again," Andrew replied. "Diana isn't quite Ian's ex-wife just yet, Andrew," Nathaniel corrected. "It's just a matter of time and paperwork, boss," Andrew quipped. "Indeed," Nathaniel replied. He paused before adding, "Am I a terrible person for supporting Ian? Because I actually agree with his thinking. Keeping the Blackwoods locked up didn't mean they couldn't come after Ethan. Now, if they're out there and decide to fuck around and find out, it won't look like Ethan is just lying in bed with a candle burning on his headboard." "That's an interesting take, boss," Jake chimed in. "Are we going to let them strike first, though?" Ash asked. "That's the only way to claim self-defense, Ash," Andrew responded. "Are we telling Blackwood?" Andrew probed with interest. "Nah. He'll only confront Ian, and then Ian will know Ash is a snitch," Nathaniel joked, making the men laugh. "Or Sheriff Logan," Ash pointed out. "Sheriff Logan is Ian's friend. There must be some level of trust there," Jake pointed out. "So we wait?" Ash asked with interest. "Yes, we will wait and stay vigilant," Nathaniel replied, before crossing the room to the other side. Arya watched as he joined them. Nathaniel smoothly drew her close and pressed a kiss on her temple while Liam and Owen wrapped their arms around her waist on both sides. "All right. Now that you all know we have a place set up for your bachelorette party, when do you want it? Nathaniel asked. Friday, Arya said, smiling up at him before glancing at Anna and Anita for confirmation. Free, Anita quipped. Anna got up and started to shimmy. Alex pulled her into a side hug, chuckling. Are we invited? Ethan asked. No, Isla responded, making him arch an eyebrow at her. She broke into giggles. We will see about that, Ethan mused to himself with devilish relish. Friday then? Nathaniel asked Arya to confirm. Yep, Arya replied and offered him a fist bump. Nathaniel looked from her face to her extended fist, then dropped a kiss on her lips. Arya giggled. Owen groaned and tried to push Nathaniel away from Arya, making everyone laugh. Nathaniel picked him up, threw him over his shoulder and tickled him, making him giggle. Dad, stop, Owen managed to say between laughter. Dad, me too. Liam called out, raising his hands. Nathaniel carried him as well, slinging Owen onto one shoulder. When he noticed Tristan looking up at him expectantly, he said, Sorry, kid, I can't carry you like that. Your doctor would have my hide. Laughter resounded in the room. Arya pulled Tristan into a hug instead and adjusted the bandage around his head. From where he sat in the corner, Justin watched, smiling. As the conversation continued, the kitchen staff entered, carrying trays of food and drinks, and they moved through the room, placing dishes on the tables and offering refreshments to the guests. Trays of mini beef Wellingtons, truffle mushroom tarts, and lamb skewers were set down on the coffee table by the fire, followed by brie and cranberry phyllo cups, lobster sliders, and goat cheese crostini. Mary, overseeing the staff, placed a platter of spiced apple tartlets, chocolate-dipped shortbread cookies, and mini cinnamon bundt cakes on another table. She gestured to a staff member carrying a separate tray of pralines and white chocolate truffles to place it near the dessert spread. More staff members entered with drinks, mulled wine, peppermint hot chocolate, and spiced cider, along with glasses of aged scotch and red wine for those who preferred something stronger. The guests selected their preferred drinks and finger foods as the staff continued to serve them. Nathaniel sat on one of the couches and pulled Arya onto his lap while she ate and fed him. Owen and Liam climbed onto the arms of the chair, flanking them and opening their mouths, waiting to be fed as well. Arya got up from Nathaniel's lap and prepared 3 extra plates, placing them on the table in front of her. She then fed the twins from separate plates. When she noticed Tristan hesitating, she gestured for him to come closer and fed him from the 3rd plate. I see why God gave you 3 babies at once. You're good at this, Ethan quipped, making everyone chuckle. Arya threw a balled-up tissue at him, and the boys giggled. With everyone enjoying themselves, most had forgotten that Sheriff Logan was still there, except for Aidan and Jake, who kept an eye on him. They watched as he sat close to Miss Everly, appearing relaxed and engaged in small talk. After a few more minutes, Aidan finally spoke up. Sheriff Logan, it's getting late, isn't it? He remarked. Andrew lowered his gaze to hide a laugh. Oh, he can stay if he wants to. I'm sure we have room, Nathaniel said. No, we don't, boss, Aidan replied, frowning at him. Andrew cleared his throat to keep from laughing out loud. Nathaniel lowered his eyes to hide a chuckle. It's okay, I should head out, Sheriff Logan said as he stood up. Miss Everly got up as well and offered to see him out. The man turned beet red, nodded, and moved towards the exit, with every eye in the room following them. As Miss Everly passed Aidan, she smacked him on the forearm. Aidan responded with an, I've got my eyes on you gesture. That was enough to make Andrew lose his battle with laughter. He broke down laughing, and Liam, who had no idea what his uncle was laughing about, joined in, laughing hard and slapping his knees. You are such a clown, Liam Hawthorne, Arya quipped as she playfully pulled his nose, drawing even more laughter from the room. Ash, standing by the door, watched as Miss Everly walked Sheriff Logan to his patrol truck. Before the man left, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss on the back of it. Miss Everly then stretched onto her toes and kissed his jaw. Ash glanced back in Aidan's direction, seeing him standing with the boss, joking around. He chuckled to himself, wondering how Aidan would react if he had seen that. Soon enough, Miss Everly returned, and Ash made sure she realized that he had seen her. She chuckled, shaking her head as she walked past him. You all need to keep your noses out of my business, she said. Ash grinned. I didn't even say anything. I saw it in your eyes, busybody, she quipped, making Ash laugh. When Miss Everly returned to her seat and began preparing to take the triplets upstairs, Ethan called out, "Good night, Aunt Helena." The older woman shook her head, laughing. "I just knew you would say something, Blackwood," she replied. "Glad not to disappoint," Ethan responded. Noria, Anna, Claire, Juliet, and Cassandra stood up to help. Arya quickly dropped a kiss on Nathaniel's forehead before climbing off his lap to join the other women. She hurried to take a bath before returning to the nursery to help feed the babies. With Arya gone with most of the ladies, it didn't take long for the gathering in the living room to disperse. Much later, when Nathaniel returned to their room and saw Arya preparing for bed, he shut the door, locked it, and leaned against it. "Now, I suppose it's time. We addressed your act of rebellion earlier." Arya watched as he took off his shirt and then unbuckled his belt in a slow, deliberate motion. She shook with laughter, and when he took a step forward, she squealed and jumped onto the bed. "There's nowhere to run, my love. You'll get your punishment," he teased. Arya collapsed in laughter. When he got close enough, he grabbed her by the ankles and dragged her toward him. She squealed for help, laughing hard. Nathaniel grinned and said, "You must have forgotten. This room is noise-proof." Arya continued giggling until he pressed a kiss on her instep. Her laughter faded, and her chest rose and fell with labored breaths. Nathaniel's passionate gaze burned into hers. Downstairs, as the Hawthorne guards paired with their partners and began to leave, Ethan took Isla's hand and led her away. Alex did the same to Anna. Justin carried Tristan, who was already dozing off, and, casting a glance in Jaden's direction, headed toward the exit. Jaden said goodnight to her colleagues and followed Justin. Falling in step with him, the two walked side by side to the cottage assigned to him. When Jaden saw the cottage ahead, she smiled to herself, thinking it looked like something out of a storybook. Upon entering, she thought it was exactly what she would have expected from her employer. The floor was made of polished wood, and massive timber beams stretched overhead. A stone fireplace with a roaring fire crackling inside dominated one side of the room, casting a soft glow over the comfortable leather chairs and natural wood furniture, arranged close to it. A short staircase led to the upper floor, framed by hand-carved wooden railings. French doors opened to a view of the forest, where the trees stood adorned with freshly fallen snow. Jaden thought that working with the Hawthornes sometimes made one forget what the real world was like, with how much care and effort the family put into making everyone around them feel welcome. "This way, please," Justin said as he headed toward the stairs. "The bed is upstairs," Tristan added in a sleepy tone, lifting his head from his father's shoulder to look at Jaden. She smiled at him in response, and the boy lowered his head back and shut his eyes. Following Justin up the stairs, she soon discovered that the upper level was entirely dedicated to the bedroom. Though not overly spacious, the warm glow of the garden lamps filtering through the large windows made the space feel almost enchanting. The vaulted ceiling, supported by thick wooden beams, added a cabin-like charm, while the weathered wooden walls lent an earthy, lived-in feel. A large bed sat against one wall, dressed in cozy bedding and an assortment of pillows. Two bedside tables, each with a softly glowing lamp, flanked the bed. A wardrobe stood against one side wall, while a wooden dresser occupied the opposite side. The floor, made of rich, aged wood, was partially covered by a colourful geometric patterned rug. Near the window, a small vase of sunflowers added a bright contrast to the room's warm, rustic tones. "You can stay up here with Tristan, and I'll sleep on the couch downstairs," Justin began, but Jaden cut him off. "I'm the bodyguard, Mr. Graham." "I mean Justin, not Tristan's nanny. I can handle rough. I'll stay downstairs," she replied. Justin gently placed Tristan on the bed, took off his shoes and jacket, and covered him with a blanket. Then he moved to stand toe-to-toe with Jaden. Peering into her eyes, he said, "Not in here. In here, Jaden, you're a friend. And you're not sleeping on the couch." He watched the faint glint of emotion in her eyes as he made his impassioned stance. Not looking away, she nodded. Justin knew he was supposed to step back and head downstairs, but the problem was, he couldn't remember what the next course of action was as he continued to look into her eyes. "We should probably go to bed," Jaden said softly. "Yes, we should," Justin answered in a low, almost pained tone, his eyes still locked on hers. "Separate beds," she said firmly but gently. Justin blinked, nodded quickly, and took a step back, his face reddening with embarrassment. "Of course. Good night, Jaden," he murmured before heading downstairs. 24 hours later, after long, endless days of snow, it was finally Friday. Aria woke up, nestled in Nathaniel's arms. When she remembered what day it was, a grin spread across her face. It was fun day. Aria shifted in Nathaniel's arms, craning her neck to smile up at his face. His eyes were shut, and his rhythmic breathing suggested he was still asleep. But that didn't matter. She gently pressed a kiss to his jaw and snuggled closer to his body, a happy grin on her face. Their plans for the day were already set. After breakfast, they were scheduled for a pampering session, including pedicures, manicures, and full-body massages from a spa parlor team that Anna had recommended and Andrew had approved. The team was expected to arrive at the ranch at 12 noon, giving the ladies about 5 hours to relax before dressing up and trying out the karaoke setup in the marquee tent. After that, Ash and Adam were supposed to smuggle them out of the ranch to the strip club, where they planned to have 2 hours of fun before returning for a late-night party catered by the Hawthorne kitchen. The men were allowed to join in for the party later. Anna and Anita had agreed to the plan. Everything was well organized, and Aria believed nothing could go wrong. "I hope nothing goes wrong," she corrected herself. "Good morning, babe." Nathaniel's deep, husky voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up, expecting his usual good morning kiss followed by a dose of his early morning affection. But instead, Nathaniel pulled back and sat up before leaving the bed. Aria followed him with her eyes, her lips slightly parted in surprise. "Where's my kiss? My cuddle?" she thought, feeling a little disappointed. She watched as he disappeared into the bathroom, then let out a sigh and lay back on the bed. "Is he angry with me?" she wondered, trying to think of anything she might have done to upset him. Nothing came to mind except the stripper plan. A worried frown shadowed her face, but she quickly shook the thought away. "Nathaniel isn't that insecure or egocentric," she reasoned. "Besides, the party isn't for me. I'm just organizing it for my friends, and they wanted the traditional way of doing things. He was a good sport about it, so it couldn't be that, right?" She started to get out of bed, but before she could, Nathaniel emerged from the bathroom, tying a towel around his waist. He strode across the room to the walk-in closet and asked, "You have everything you need for the party, right, babe? You don't need anything from me?" Aria noted that he sounded like himself, definitely not angry or against the party. "No, darling. Andrew has already helped with everything we needed," she replied. "Great," Nathaniel said, flashing her a smile. Aria got up and walked to the entrance of the closet, watching him throw on some clothes. "Are you going somewhere?" she asked with interest, not liking the break in their routine. "The bail money for Diana and her sons has been paid, so we decided to be there to set conditions for their release. We're also heading to the Blackwood house to assess what's been done there," Nathaniel explained. "I see," Aria murmured. "Don't worry. I'll try to get back in time to honor your invitation to the party," he said, winking at her. Aria didn't like the sound of that. It seemed like he planned to be out for the entire day. Even though the voice in her head reminded her that his absence would be an advantage to the group, she still didn't fully approve. "Are you at least going to have breakfast before you leave?" she asked with concern. "I'll have Ms. Jonas pack something for me on my way out," he replied. After finishing dressing, he strode past her and headed for the door. Aria felt a deep unease. He hadn't kissed her goodbye again. "Nathan, my love," she called, making him pause mid-stride and turn back. Her intense, searching gaze, filled with emotion, tugged at his heart. He had planned to leave her wanting, to make her long for his return. But the problem with that plan was that the bond he shared with Aria was beyond ordinary. It felt unnatural to deny himself, or her. One look at her wistful expression was enough to make him abandon his initial resolve. Striding back to her, he cupped her face, smiled into her eyes, and lowered his lips to hers. Normally, it would have been a brief goodbye kiss, but after denying them both their usual morning intimacy, his body was strung tight with pent-up desire. Instead, He kissed her deeply, leaving her clinging to him when he finally pulled away. He smiled warmly down at her. "Keep that thought, baby," he whispered, drawing a smile from her before turning to leave. In Arya's world, everything felt right again. She turned and practically skipped toward the bathroom. Nathaniel headed down the stairs and smiled when he saw Alex and Ethan joining him in the kitchen. "Good morning, Alex." "Good morning, Ethan," Nathaniel greeted. The two responded in kind, but before Nathaniel could say more, he caught Miss Jonas watching them intently. When their eyes met, she grinned unabashedly. The bloody spy. Nathaniel arched an eyebrow at her. "I hope you enjoy your breakfast, sir," she said in a deceptively polite tone, gently pushing forward the packed food baskets. "Thank you, Miss Jonas," Ethan replied pointedly, picking up a basket with Alex, both of them grinning at her. Nathaniel held back a laugh. As they left the living room and stepped outside, he asked, "I assume we're following the plan?" Alex cleared his throat in a suspiciously hesitant way. "I tried that thing where you build up sexual tension to break the dam later, like the intimacy coach advised." Nathaniel chuckled, already sensing Alex hadn't pulled it off. "So, did you succeed?" he asked as they walked towards the meeting spot, away from the house's view. "Not exactly," Alex admitted with a slow drawl. Nathaniel laughed, then turned to Ethan. "And you? Did you succeed?" Ethan didn't bother meeting Nathaniel's gaze as he muttered, "I caved in like a bitch." Alex and Nathaniel burst into laughter. "I think that coaching thing is for simps," Ethan added, making the other two laugh even harder. "Ethan, you failed. Alex failed. I failed. Nobody needs to know," Nathaniel said between chuckles. "I'm not surprised you failed, Nate," Ethan shot back. "I caved for a kiss. Shoot me," Nathaniel quipped. "Just a kiss?" Alex asked, eyes widening. Then, almost to himself, he muttered, "Damn it." Nathaniel shook with laughter. They had spent the past 48 hours being trained by an intimacy coach introduced by Marcus, the owner of the strip club. The man had encouraged them to fully immerse themselves in the stripper persona they were trying to embody, and Nathaniel had thought, why not? But most of his coaching advice was just plain common sense. Nathaniel figured the guy didn't quite understand the level of emotional involvement they shared with their partners. That was likely why he believed they needed to train their minds to see themselves solely as objects whose only purpose was to satisfy their partners, getting lost deep enough in the character to make it believable. But the thing was, when you loved someone as deeply as Nathaniel loved Arya, he was already lost the moment their eyes met. Once he touched her, her pleasure was his and his was hers. They were one body, one mind, one soul. There was no need to play roles when they already felt that way. As Nathaniel arrived at the meeting spot, he took note of the men joining in and smiled to himself. Back at the house, after Arya finished freshening up, she hurried to the children's room and found her aunt already there with Noria and Miss Bella. Noria giggled when she met Arya's gaze, and Arya smiled softly in response. "Good morning, Auntie Bella Noria," Arya greeted them as she entered, and the ladies responded in kind. Arya went to pull Noria into a hug, then moved on to hug Bella and her aunt. "I can't thank you enough for your dedication and care," Arya said to the three women. "Ah, stop it," Bella replied, waving off the compliment. "I know I speak for your aunt and Noria when I say we love caring for these little cuties," she added, gently stroking the back of her index finger over Mason's soft cheek, earning an approving smile from him, which made everyone laugh. Owen and Liam wandered inside, rubbing sleep from their eyes. "We have 4 more days," Liam said. "4 more days to what?" Arya asked, intrigued. "The carnival, Mum," Owen replied. "Ah, of course," Arya said as the two approached to hug her good morning. She pressed a kiss to their foreheads. After the children were bathed, dressed and fed, the staff selected to watch them resume their duties, and Arya left the room with Bella, her aunt Noria and the twins, heading downstairs for breakfast. Upon reaching the stairs, Arya saw Anita and Claire speaking with Ash and Adam. When Anita saw Arya, she quickly called for her to come closer as she and Claire greeted Miss Everly, Miss Bella and Noria. Arya hurried over to them. "What happened?" Arya whispered as she greeted Adam and Ash. "Good morning, Dr. Hawthorne," Adam and Ash greeted in response. "Good morning, boss," Claire greeted. Aria smiled and pulled the other ladies in for a hug. "What's up?" Aria asked with interest. Ash and Adam were just saying that with Nate gone with Andrew, Charles, Jake, Aidan and Anton, they could sneak the male strippers into the marquee tent since it's not here at the house and is close to the exit, Anita said with barely contained excitement. Aria's brows furrowed as she turned her gaze to Ash and Adam. "But we could be breaking security protocol. I wouldn't want us to inadvertently cause trouble by wanting to throw a party," Aria said. "You don't need to worry about that, Dr. Hawthorne. We'll handle it and make sure there are no hiccups," Adam assured her. Aria looked from him to Ash, who nodded in confirmation. "Okay, as long as you're certain, we won't be putting the family in danger," Aria said. Anita squealed after the men gave the ladies a curt nod and left. Jaden came in with Tristan, who hurried off to join Owen and Liam when he saw them. "Good morning, Aunt Jaden," the boys chorused, waving at her. She waved back in response. Then to Dr. Hawthorne she said, "Good morning, ma'am," before greeting the others. "Good morning, Jaden. Join us, please," Aria responded. Around a few minutes to 12 in the afternoon, the ladies started to head out. Aria, not wanting to exclude the twins and Tristan but knowing how her boys would react when they learned what the gathering was supposed to be about, held their hands and continued toward the exit. "Where are we going?" Owen asked. "We're going to celebrate Aunt Anna and Aunt Anita's engagement with fun activities in the marquee tent," Aria explained. "What kind of fun activities?" Liam asked hesitantly. "Manicure, pedicure, you know," she replied. "That's for girls," Tristan piped up. Liam and Owen slowly let go of their mum's hands. "We'd like to politely decline," Owen said as the boys started to back away. "Yeah, Mom, have fun. Don't worry about us, we'll be fine," Liam added. "Yeah, have fun," Tristan said, and the three turned around and rushed toward the stairs, laughing. Aria nodded and held one of the staff's gaze. The staff member immediately understood and moved to follow the children. When Jaden made to follow them, Aria reached for her wrist to stop her, then looped her arm through hers to usher her toward the exit. "Don't worry about them, they'll be fine," Aria said. Jaden opened her mouth to argue but then paused, realizing she didn't have a reason to, and slowly shut it. Aria patted the back of her hand. "Thanks, Dr. Hawthorne," she responded in a low, hushed tone. Ash, Adam, Stephen, and Seth assisted in transporting the ladies from the house to the marquee tent. As Aria stepped out of the car, she immediately noticed a few differences from their last visit. Beyond the music filtering through the chilly air, a new decorative touch had been added, an intricate wreath framing the entrance, woven with red roses, orchids, and bursts of peonies and tulips, their bright hues adding a playful contrast to the deeper tones. Clusters of hydrangeas and sprigs of baby's breath softened the arrangement, lending an air of both elegance and celebration. The hum of excitement filled the cold outdoor space as the ladies spilled out of the cars, their chatter blending with the rhythmic beat of the music. "Thank you, Ash," Aria said as she moved away from the car and headed toward the entrance with Anita and Anna flanking her. Inside, they spotted the team Andrew had helped them hire gathered in one corner of the room, clapping and cheering them on. Aria chuckled as Anita and Anna began dancing to the cheers. Somewhere in the marquee tent, someone turned up the music, and soon everyone joined in, clapping and cheering along. "This may not be an honor walk, but I sure feel like a celebrity right now," Anita quipped. "What are you talking about? Did you see that entrance?" "I feel way more than a celebrity," Anna chimed in, making everyone laugh. A woman dressed in a white top and matching pants, with a white mask covering her face, stepped forward. Clearing her throat, she signaled for the clapping and cheering to stop. A warm smile spread across her face as she first directed her gaze toward Ariana, then shifted it to Anna, Anita, and the rest of the ladies. "I'm Sophia," she introduced herself, her voice soft and calming. "I'll be overseeing your spa experience today." She paused briefly before continuing. "We've prepared a luxurious treatment for each of you. You'll begin with a full body massage, followed by a rejuvenating soak in the jacuzzi. Afterward, you can relax on plush Arabian floor cushions, where a selection of refreshments will be waiting. To enhance your experience, Each of you will have 2 of my team members attending to you, Sophia added. They will guide you to your private enclosure, where you can fully immerse yourselves in the experience. With that, she turned and gestured to the massage therapists, who stepped forward gracefully. Each therapist approached one of the ladies, offering a polite nod before leading them toward a paneled enclosure. Anita looked back at Arya and giggled. "Thank you," she mouthed to her. Arya nodded in acknowledgement and whispered, "You're most welcome." Once inside the enclosure, Anita noticed the space was far more inviting than before. The massage table was now draped in soft linens, the jacuzzi bubbled warmly, and the cozy floor seating was arranged around a table laden with an assortment of fresh fruit, cheese platters, stuffed grape leaves, hummus with warm pita bread, and delicate pastries. Instead of alcohol, there were carafes of fruit-infused water, freshly squeezed juices, and herbal teas. Anita couldn't help but giggle quietly to herself. She looked back as one of the therapists closed the door behind her. She felt a tad isolated and thought to herself that it wasn't as much fun if she couldn't gossip with Arya. "Give me a second," Anita said, holding up a finger as she rushed to open the door. As she did, the door opposite hers opened too, and Anna called out, "I can't gossip all the way here, Ariana." Anita burst into laughter. "Okay, maybe we need a different approach," Arya said as she stepped out of her own cubicle. Before long, all the massage tables were moved into the open center space and the ladies lay down on their tables with contented sighs. "Better?" Arya called out. "Very," Anita replied. "Just the way it should be," Anna added. "Can we stay like this forever?" Evangeline chimed in as the therapist began kneading her back. Laughter echoed through the expansive space. As the massage therapists worked their way across each of the ladies, the soothing rhythm of their hands helped to ease any tension in their muscles. For most, it was an instant relief, but Jaden felt a bit out of place. She wasn't one to enjoy being touched by strangers, and the unfamiliar sensation of the therapist's hands on her body made her stiffen at first. However, after a few minutes of gentle kneading and practiced breathing on her side, she began to relax, thinking the pressure was just firm enough to feel soothing, but not too intense to become unbearable. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, gradually letting go of her discomfort as she allowed the therapist to work on the knots in her shoulders. By the time the session was over, she was surprised to find that she had actually enjoyed it. The ladies were each guided to their own private cubicle, where the warm, bubbling jacuzzi awaited. The soothing blend of music, complemented by the calming scents of essential oils and delicious aromas of food, created the perfect atmosphere for relaxation. The women settled into the tubs, and upon discovering that each enclosed space was soundproof, they left their doors open so they could still call out to each other and keep the conversation going. "Ah, this is heavenly," Anna sighed, letting her body sink into the warm water. "I think I could fall asleep in here," she said loud enough for others to hear. "I'm pretty sure I'll be snoring before long," Anita replied, her voice light and playful, as she leaned back against the edge of her tub and started making a snoring sound. "Yup, something like this," she quipped, mimicking the sound. "Sss, sss." Across the room, Jaden couldn't help but chuckle as she sank into the water. "Okay, I'll admit it. I thought the massage was going to be weird, but now I'm a convert," she said. "See? Told you so," Arya teased from her own jacuzzi, leaning against the edge. "Nothing to be scared of," she added with a contented sigh. Evangeline, already chatting away from her cubicle, chimed in, "I think we should do this every weekend. This is like a dream come true," she called out happily. "Every weekend, Dr. Hart." Anna laughed. Evangeline groaned, understanding the playful jab. She was a doctor. When would she ever have the time for spa treatments every weekend? Plus, she was expecting a baby. "Boss, can we do this for bonding sometimes?" Claire called out. Arya giggled from her cubicle. "Good idea, Dr. Sterling," she replied. "Once a quarter sounds about right. We'll need to keep the spa staff on speed dial for that." "Quarterly?" Cassandra gasped in mock horror. "See how she smoothly slipped that in?" Dr. Yen chimed in. Arya burst into laughter as they all joined in, teasing her playfully. Soon enough, the light banter and laughter quieted as the women relaxed into the peaceful comfort of the jacuzzis, each savoring the calm moment. Jaden, no longer feeling tense, smiled and joined in the light-hearted conversation. The gentle sound of the warm water and soft chatter blended together, creating a sense of camaraderie and relaxation. Then her mind drifted to the morning before when she had accidentally walked in on Justin while he was in the bathroom, wearing only his boxers. She couldn't tell who was more embarrassed, her or him. He was still experiencing the typical morning situation, and the bulge was quite evident. Jaden had been mortified, unsure whether her shock came from the unexpected sight of him in that state, or from the surprise that someone with such an athletic frame could have such a, presence. Later, when her brain finally resumed functioning, she noted his height and shoe size and thought maybe it shouldn't have been such a surprise. But the thing was, she had looked, and he had caught her looking. Remembering it now, her skin grew hot, and she lowered herself completely into the soapy water, hoping to hide the flush spreading across her face. "Okay, who's got the best spa day story?" Anita asked, raising her voice so the others could hear. "Easy," Anna replied. "I've been to spas before, but this one takes the cake. Can't beat the company either." The women giggled. After about 4 hours of pampering, the music stopped, and the sound of Sophia's voice echoed through the space. "The spa experience has come to an end, ladies," she announced. A collective groan filled the expansive room. Evangeline, who had fallen asleep, stirred awake, a content smile spreading across her lips. She felt utterly pampered. "Now, let's move to the next stage. Getting ready for the party," Sophia continued in a soft, warm tone. In each enclosure, the ladies were gently ushered out of the jacuzzis and handed fluffy white bathrobes, which they all eagerly put on. The massage therapists led them to a tall lounge area in front of mirrors, where another set of women awaited to help with the next step of the experience: grooming. The ladies settled into plush chairs, and the grooming began. One therapist carefully trimmed Arya's eyebrows. Another worked on filing her nails, shaping them into neat ovals before applying a clear coat of polish. A third attendant moved to Arya's feet, gently soaking them in warm water before exfoliating and massaging them with soothing lotions. Arya let out a soft, contented sigh as she relaxed into the pampering, her eyes closing for a brief moment, letting herself fully enjoy the experience. The same process was repeated for each of the women, with gentle hands tending to their brows, nails, and feet. The sound of the soft music and quiet chatter filled the air as the ladies were pampered one by one. Noria's nails were polished with a soft pink hue, while Anita's eyebrows were perfectly shaped, and Anna's feet were given a gentle massage, making her giggle with delight. The grooming continued for what felt like hours, with the ladies all quietly enjoying the attention. In Arya's cubicle, the sound of a feminine voice calling her name made her open her eyes. She blinked and smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked radiant, with her eyebrows and lashes neatly groomed and her nails polished. But it was the gold-wrapped dress hanging on one side of the rack that caught her attention. Her heart raced at the thought of Nathaniel joining them, seeing her in the alluring gold dress, her face carefully made up, and her skin soft and smooth from the exotic oils. "Ready?" one of the attendants asked, holding up the dress with a gentle smile. Arya nodded, feeling the flutter of excitement in her chest. She allowed the attendants to help her up, lifting the soft robe off her shoulders and slipping into the dress, which hugged her curves just right. The transformation was complete. As Arya stepped outside, she watched the ladies begin to emerge from various enclosures, all looking radiant and stunning. She couldn't help but gasp when she saw her aunt, who appeared no older than 30. Miss Bella, with her streak of white hair, resembled an Adonis. Arya, overjoyed, did a happy dance that had everyone laughing. She thought everyone looked absolutely beautiful. Anita catwalked toward Anna, pulling her forward, so the two of them continued toward the center stage and up the few steps framing it. The others cheered and clapped as the two women took a bow at the center stage. The microphone descended from the ceiling and the karaoke screen appeared. After choosing a song, a loud drum roll echoed through the space, and the beat began. The voices of the two women filled the room, and others began clapping and dancing along. In your eyes I found my place, a tender smile, a soft embrace. Every moment, time stands still. With you, my heart is always filled. Together, love, we'll climb the hill to the very peak. The two sang, dancing and circling around each other. When the song ended, they picked a country song and sang that as well. Afterward, they came down from the stage and another set of ladies went up. Laughter and clapping filled the expansive space as the fun continued. Then, as if on cue, just when the ladies were finishing the karaoke and no one was on stage, all the lights suddenly went off, causing the ladies to freeze in place. "Is it time?" Anna squealed with delight. They could hear fast shuffling of feet, then silence. The lights came back on and the ladies gasped when they saw the men on stage dressed in camo pants and white round-neck fitted shirts. "Oh my God!" the ladies squealed, unable to contain their excitement. Aria stared, mouth agape. The vast arena echoed with a deep, husky voice announcing, "Welcome to this episode of What the Ladies Ordered." A pause followed, punctuated by the brief, electrifying strum of an electric guitar. Then the voice continued, "And what they got." A slow, soulful string melody hummed in the background as the voice declared, "Ladies, let me introduce you to..." The voice trailed off just as the circular top panel of the stage began to rotate. Around its edge, men stood motionless, each clad in nothing but dark leather masks, black vest over loose camo cargo pants. Their powerful sculpted chests were outlined, their skin glistening under the dim, flickering lights. With their heads thrown back, they let out a synchronized howl, fists clenched at their sides. The ladies erupted into a wild chorus of exhilaration, cheers, gasps, and delighted shrieks blending into a chaotic symphony of excitement. "Dear Lord," Miss Everly gasped as her eyes landed on Sheriff Logan among the performers, then burst into laughter. "Oh my God, these are our men!" Anna exclaimed, her excitement tinged with disbelief. But once it fully registered, she started jumping, cheering, and whistling. "Whoa, yes, let's go, boys," she hollered. "I can't believe Aiden would do this." Noria laughed, pressing her hands to her face as if to contain her shock. "You are speaking of Aiden? Charles is there," Claire responded with a mix of shock and delight. "That's my man," Anita shouted, who was the first to realize that the dancers were the Hawthorne men. She wasted no time dancing along with the music, hyping them up with cheers. "Somebody call 911 'cause this is fire." Eva's wide eyes darted frantically across the stage, scanning the performers. When she finally spotted a familiar figure, she broke into giggles. "Oh my God!" she sputtered between laughter, her cheeks heating with a mix of shyness and pride as she recognized Jake. Isla covered her face, only daring to peek through the gaps between her fingers as her eyes locked onto the man she was certain was Ethan. She couldn't stop laughing, her stomach quaking from amusement. Jaden, however, wanted nothing more than to disappear. A flood of chaotic emotions overwhelmed her as her eyes landed on Justin Graham. She glanced, then quickly averted her gaze, her eyes darting everywhere but the stage. Yet despite herself, she kept sneaking glances at him, completely thrown off by how someone who usually seemed so clueless and innocent had ended up in this madness. Then it hit her. He was friends with Ethan Blackwood. That explained everything. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Finally giving in, she abandoned her reluctance, joined the chaos, and cupped her hands around her mouth. "Woo! Woo! Work it, boys!" she called out, followed by a loud, shameless whistle. Then, as if on cue, the men leaned back in unison, their upper bodies arching with hypnotic control. A deep, rhythmic bass dropped, sending vibrations through the entire venue as the music swelled with an intoxicating beat. Their movements began slowly, hips rolling in smooth, sinuous waves, undulating to the music like a perfectly synchronized tide. "Lord have mercy," Yen cheered. "Yes," she cried out, her laughter bubbling over. "I suddenly believe in miracles," she added between laughs. Aria's mouth hung open still. The performance was mesmerizing. an artful display of raw power, control, and seduction. Then, without warning, the men executed a seamless flip, landing low on the stage in a crouch. With fluid precision, they transitioned into body rolls, their defined muscles flexing and rippling as they moved in a deliberate, sensual rhythm. "Hot damn! Oh, I need a fan, somebody help me!" Juliet exclaimed, laughing as she fanned herself dramatically. "Oh, somebody's been practicing!" Anna cheered, unable to contain her laughter. "Go, Alex! Whoa!" As the men rose, their choreography shifted. A mix of Magic Mike-inspired moves designed to tease and enthrall. They prowled forward, executing slow grinds, thrusts, and smooth, effortless transitions between intricate floor work and commanding upright stances. Some mimicked lassoing an imaginary partner, rolling their hips as they pulled the invisible rope in close, while others performed the signature slow body drag, running their hands down their own torsos before sinking into deep, controlled thrusts. "Damn! Yes! That's what I'm talking about," Cassandra called out, her voice rising above the noise as she clapped and cheered. "That's right! Own that stage, baby!" Claire joined in. Yen burst into giggles. "I don't know whether to cheer or pray," she said almost to herself as she watched Will. "Drop it low, baby!" Noria shouted, causing the women around her to erupt into laughter. Who knew the sheriff had moves? "What?" Anita teased, her grin widening as Ms. Everly dropped to her knees, laughing uncontrollably. Aria's gaze locked onto one of the masked men. While the disguises were crafted to make them indistinguishable, the masks, the slicked-back hair, the sleeveless black shirts, she knew exactly which one was Nathaniel. The way he moved, the specific roll of his hips, the familiar dips and isolations, she recognized them instantly. These were movements he had used on her before. Her face flushed. A possessive twinge ran through her, the thrill of watching him mixed with the frustration of knowing she wasn't the only one witnessing this display. A soft chuckle escaped her as it hit her. Nathaniel must have felt the same way, picturing her giving attention to some random guy when it should only ever be his. That possessive, cunning, devilish, beautiful man, she mused to herself. "God, I love him," she whispered, her eyes never leaving him. He was the most powerfully masculine, sensual, and flawlessly built man she had ever seen. "Oh, he's definitely going to make me pay for this tonight, and I can't wait." "Damn, he looks hot," she thought, stifling a giggle. On stage, the men executed a synchronized body wave, dropping low before thrusting forward with a calculated, tantalizing roll of their hips. They mimicked cupping and lifting imaginary patrons, teasing the air as they ground in slow, deliberate motions, deep, intoxicating, and utterly captivating. The ladies erupted into giggles, some covering their faces, their cheeks flushing with heat. Dawn's eyes were solely on Anton. She couldn't quite believe that he had kept this from her. She thought he looked completely delicious. "Hawthorne men, y'all did not come to play." Anita hyped them up, her energy contagious. "Somebody's been hiding their real talents," she added, making the ladies laugh even harder. "I will never recover from this," Cassandra gasped between fits of laughter. "Booty for days, Anton," Dawn cheered, laughing. The performance was a masterclass in seduction, sensual, commanding, and utterly enthralling. When the dance ended and the men began jumping down from the stage, the women gasped in awe. Their shock quickly turned into excited squeals as the men advanced toward them. A few women instinctively backed away, their chests rising and falling with excitement and anticipation. Miss Everly, however, wasted no time. The moment Sheriff Logan got close enough, she reached up, cupped his masked face, and kissed him without hesitation. Anita and Aria erupted into cheers. "Get it, Auntie!" they hollered, laughing. As Alex approached Anna, she reached for his hand, her eyes warm with affection. Without hesitation, she led him into her private enclosure. The door had barely shut before she lunged at him, making him break character with a quiet chuckle. She pressed her mouth to his, her kiss eager and claiming. "Gosh, you look hot, baby," she murmured in a low, sultry tone. "So are you, my love," Alex replied, lifting her into his arms as she kissed him with unrestrained passion. Outside, Anita didn't wait for Andrew to reach her. She hurried toward him, and he lifted her up effortlessly. Wrapping her arms around his neck, she smoothed back his hair and whispered, "Oh, I'm going to teach you the consequences of your foreplay, Sir MacLeod." Andrew shook with laughter. Noria ran to Aidan, leaping into his arms. He caught her mid-air in a powerful move. She cupped his jaw and pressed her lips to his, not caring that people were watching. Aidan, having already survived her catcall earlier without breaking character, whispered, "You are a wild one, aren't you?" Noria giggled, planting kisses all over his face as he cupped her shapely back and carried her into her private enclosure. "Now you're gonna get it," he teased, making her giggle uncontrollably. Jaden saw Justin hesitate at the foot of the stage, so she crossed the space between them. "Well, that was something, Mr. Graham. I never would have imagined you." Justin didn't let her finish. Ethan had teased him relentlessly about getting too confident, thinking he could land Jaden after being a doormat for Pamela for so many years. For once, he wanted to prove he had a backbone and could go after what he wanted. Placing a finger over her lips, he held her gaze through his mask. He took her wrist gently, guiding her toward her private enclosure. He almost lost his courage when she arched a daring brow at him, but Justin knew if he backed off now, he would never have the chance again. He closed the space between them, locking eyes as he slowly cupped her perfectly symmetrical face. He stroked her lips with his thumbs, listening to her breathing quicken. He paused, giving her the opportunity to say no, to stop him, to push him away, but she didn't. He kissed her then, his eyes wide open, still locked with hers. The kiss was hesitant, slow, as Justin took his time. Jaden, feeling every inch of her body aching for more, surged forward and deepened the kiss. She closed her eyes, savoring the feel of his lips against hers. Justin let out a relieved sigh and kissed her back with more confidence, not holding back. His kiss grew more intense, building a dam of need and hunger in Jaden as he moved his hands to her neck, stroking it gently. His hand wandered down to the soft swell of her chest. "Justin," Jaden whispered, pleasure and painful need washing over her. "I want more, Jaden, please," he murmured. Jaden paused, breaking their kiss to trail her lips down his body. She lowered herself to his pectorals, letting her tongue flick over his sensitive, beaded buds before continuing down his surprisingly chiseled abs and then to the V of his pelvis. Soon enough, his cargo pants were down around his ankles. "Jaden, you don't have to," he began, but his words faltered as she moved lower, his body trembling. "Holy," he murmured in a voice thick with pleasure, barely audible. "Jaden, please, please, stop," he begged a minute later, overwhelmed by pure pleasure. He grabbed her by the shoulders, making her stand up. Driven by the storm of emotions inside him, he turned her around, positioning her to face away from him. He guided her back against his chest, both of them leaning over the massage table as he began to soothe her aching need. "Justin," Jaden murmured, her breath shaky. Justin responded by planting kisses along her neck and shoulders, nibbling on her skin as he whispered her name over and over. Meanwhile, outside, Nathaniel approached Arya, who had her eyes fixed on him. "Would you care for a massage redo, Mom?" he asked in a low, husky voice. Arya smiled up at him, biting the corner of her lower lip. "I don't know, sir. I'm a married woman. Only one man is allowed to touch me," she replied, her voice low and seductive. "This man is a lucky one," Nathaniel said, his voice low and suggestive. "Perhaps I could introduce you to him," Arya teased, looping a finger through one of his belt loops. She drew him closer, standing on her toes to press a kiss to his jawline before pulling him to follow her. Nathaniel's gaze fell on the sway of her well-rounded hips as she moved, and he felt his body respond. "Damn it, stay in character," he quietly admonished himself.